What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Dark Naruto and his girlfriend overthrow the Hidden Leaf? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. Naruto, get your ass out of bed or I am going to come in there and make you. Naruto groggily opened his eyes at the sound of the shout. He knew full well that his older brother would follow through on his threat, but he just couldn't find the willpower to put his body into motion. So, deciding he would take all the laziness he could get, he closed his eyes again and waited for the inevitable. It came sooner than he had hoped. Suddenly the door slammed open and hard footsteps marched towards the bed. Damn it Naruto, get your ass up, now. The now was emphasized with the bed being flipped over and Naruto landing unceremoniously on the hard floor. Itai, do you have to be so rough when getting someone up, Nissan? Naruto whined as he got up off the floor. He only saw his brother's back for a second as he walked out the door. Sasuke's already waiting in the living room. His brother's irritated voice came back, and if we don't hurry we won't be able to get to the academy without being spotted. So get your ass moving. Naruto just sighed and began digging through his dresser for his cloths. Sometimes when the day started like this, he would miss the days where he was living alone with no one telling him what to do. That feeling would always be short-lived however as soon as he also recalled the pain of being alone. Naruto knew that no matter how hard his brother was on him, he would never stop thanking Kami-sama that his brother had come into his life. Quickly finishing getting dressed, Naruto headed into the living room. He saw Sasuke sitting on the couch with an impatient expression on his face. Apparently he heard Naruto come in, because he turned around to look at him. Geez, Dobi, why can't you ever be ready on time? Sasuke said in an annoyed voice. Jaga and I have been ready for at least 10 minutes now. Sasuke was wearing his usual blue high-collared shirt and white shorts. His blue shinobi sandals were sitting in the doorway. Shut up, Teme. Although Naruto and Sasuke had become friends years ago, they still made insulting each other their favorite pastime. After their quick exchange Naruto looked around to see his brother coming from the kitchen with a cup of instant ramen. Here, Jaga said as he handed Naruto the cup, I don't want to hear you complaining because you didn't get breakfast again. Jaga was also dressed as he always was. He wore a black hoodie and some black shinobi pants that were tucked into the top of his soft leather combat boots. His outfit covered almost every inch of his body except his face and some of his neck, but he also wore dark black sunglasses that completely hid his eyes from the world. The black hilt of his straight-bladed katana was showing over his right shoulder and his dark blonde hair was in his normal, almost military-style haircut. Naruto began to slurp down the noodles as fast as he could without spilling anything on his clothes, knowing his brother would kick the crap out of him if he did. Naruto's outfit looked almost exactly like his brother's, except for being dark blue with his famous red swirl on the back of his hoodie, and he wore standard blue shinobi sandals instead of boots. Years ago Jaga had actually burned his famous orange jumpsuit, and told him if he ever caught Naruto in something like that again, that he would beat him to within an inch of his life. Thus ending the days of the orange horror. He had also, at the suggestion of his brother, traded his goggles for a dark blue bandana. He had also grown out his hair a bit longer and it didn't seem to defy gravity as much as it did before. Think how it was after the time skip. So how are we going to get there today? Sasuke asked as he stood up from the couch. I think we should go with Route 3 today. Jaga said as he looked at the map of Konoha hanging on the wall. We haven't used it in a while so it is the least likely to be being watched. Both Sasuke and Naruto nodded their approval as Naruto tossed his empty ramen cup in the trash. Yosh, let's get going already. Naruto yelled while pumping his fist in the air. He then received a glare from Sasuke and punched to the head from Jaga. You were the one who made us late in the first place, and what did I tell you about yelling for no reason? Jaga said as Naruto rubbed his head in pain. Gomen ni-san, Naruto said wincing. His brother had been literally pounding modesty and silence into Naruto for years now. He had said that the reason other kids found it so easy to hate him was because he was so damn annoying most of the time. Though Naruto hated to admit it, the other kids had started to treat him with a lot more tolerance once he had started to settle down. As much as I love to see you smack Naruto around, I do think he is right about leaving. Sasuke said from the side. I guess you're right. We have wasted too much time as it is. Jaga responded, let's go. About 10 minutes later they were closing in on the academy. Just as they were about to round the last corner, Jaga let out a curse, shit, and suddenly threw his arm back, stopping the two boys behind him. I don't believe this, they're guarding the fucking entrance. Naruto and Sasuke were almost too frightened to look, but their curiosity finally got the best of them. Cautiously they leaned over to the edge of the building and saw the living nightmare that all three boys shared. Fangirls. They were everywhere, not just in front of the entrance either. It looked as if they had spread themselves out to have someone watching every possible approach the three of them could take. It also appeared that they had joined forces. All three groups, one devoted to each boy, were intermingled with each other in order to keep the boys from going towards a group that was not interested in him, and gaining entrance that way. Needless to say, the boys were terrified of going anywhere near that group of females. Naruto sometimes wanted to kill his brother for being the cause of Naruto having his own fangirls. How could a simple change of clothes cause this many problems? Flashback. Naruto, get in here now or I am going to drag you in by your hair. Do you understand me? Jaga was standing on the inside of the classroom door yelling at his old tutor who was refusing to come through the door. I don't want to, I feel weird in these clothes. Naruto's sullen reply came back. Well, you look a hell of a lot better than you did in that orange monstrosity. Now you have 5 seconds to be through that door or you are seriously going to regret it. Jagae's tone left absolutely no room for arguments. Reluctantly, Naruto slowly came into the room wearing the cloths that closely resembled his brother's. Jaga did not miss the gasp of surprise that went through the room, and he sure as hell didn't miss the very approving looks Naruto was getting from practically all the females present. Mission accomplished, he thought with a slightly evil smirk. Prepare to know the pain of fangirls Uzumaki Naruto. As Naruto and Jaga went to take their seats, a body of a boy who had just been shoved out of his seat landed in front of Naruto. He looked over to where the boy had been sitting to see, to his shock, a girl looking at him with seductive eyes and patting the seat next to her. You can sit by me, Naruto. Suddenly a chorus of female voices began around him. No, sit by me, Naruto. And, no way, Naruto wants to sit by me, don't you, Naruto? As the girls began to close in around him, eyeing him hungrily and begging him to sit with them, he heard what sounded like almost maniacal laughter. Looking up, he saw that it was coming from none other than his brother. It was at that moment Naruto realized his life was about to get a whole lot more complicated. Flashback end. Damn it, Sasuke said with fear in his eyes, they've gotten smarter, there's no way we can slip by without them seeing us. What are we going to do? Well, there is one chance we might have to get in, but it's going to be risky. Jaga said in the tone of a man facing death. We will have to try to rush past them, while using bunchins to distract them. It may be what we need to get by, but if they catch the real you, it's all over. Nani, but I suck at bunchin. I'll be caught for sure. Naruto was looking extremely worried now. Try using Henge to turn into me or Jaga. Sasuke said, at least if you are caught by one of our fangirls, there is a chance they will let you go out of disappointment, and you can make an escape before one of your catches you. With that last bit of planning, the three looked at each other with determined expressions. Jaga extended his hand first, followed by the other two who put theirs on top of his. It has been my greatest pleasure to know both of you, Jaga said in a solemn voice. May we survive to see each other again. Both the others nodded, and all three of them turned. They then charged into the mass of raging hormones in a glorious and inspiring display of courage that would have left all fangirl sufferers with profound respect and admiration for the trio. The three boys walked into their class with the air of triumphant war heroes. It had been touch and go there for a while. There had been so many fangirls that the bunchins had turned out to be a useless decoy. All three had quickly been captured. But with quick thinking that involved the using the Kawarimi no Jutsu and replacing themselves with some of the other fangirls, the trio had managed to escape from certain doom. Sasuke's relief was short-lived though, as his two worst fangirls known as Yamanaka Ino and Haruno Sakura arrived on the scene and immediately sprinted towards him. Jaga and Naruto barely had time to jump out of the way as the two girls glomped the poor Uchiha. Back off, Ino pig. Sasuke wants to be with me, not you. The pink-haired Sakura shouted. Fat chance forehead, you just can't accept the fact that Sasuke likes me and not you. Isn't that right, Sasuke-kun? The blonde finished, knowing that she was making the other girl absolutely furious. Truth be told, Ino only took every opportunity to hang on Sasuke for that reason alone, to irritate Sakura. Sure, Ino still thought Sasuke was gorgeous, and definitely still wouldn't mind winning him. It was just that lately it did not seem as important to do so. For quite a while now, her thoughts had been invaded by the image of another boy as well. That boy being the former loudest, most obnoxious person in Konoha, Uzumaki Naruto. Even in the midst of glomping Sasuke, she could still remember clearly the day her feelings had started to change for Naruto. Flashback: Ino was 10 years old and helping her mother in the flower shop by watering all the plants while her mother took care of the customers. She was working by the front door when she heard it open. Looking over to see who had come in, she was shocked to see a mass of bright blonde hair, and a very nervous Naruto standing just inside the door looking as if he was going to bolt at any moment. "Naruto, what are you doing here?" Ino asked in confusion. Not once that she could remember had he ever come into her family's store. "Well, the thing is," he stated nervously, surprising the young girl even more. "The thing is that my brother says I need to find something to do that will help me learn to be calm and patient." He said this with a little distaste in his voice. He then told me I should try gardening and that I should come here to find out more about it, and maybe buy a plant or two. Naruto looked very much like someone had a kunai to his throat and was forcing him to do their bidding. Ino could not help but let out a little snigger at the boy's obvious reluctance to be there. "Well, Mom is busy with another customer right now, but maybe I can help you," Ino stated confidently. After all, she had been helping her mother for years, so she knew a thing or two about plants. "Thanks, Ino, you have no idea how clueless I am on these things," Naruto stated with obvious relief. Ino started by telling him all about the different types of flowers available and what they meant. After about 20 minutes, the two were talking about anything and everything. After around 2 hours or so, Naruto was holding a single potted bush and a couple packets of seeds, along with a book to help beginning gardeners. "Thanks for all your help, Ino. I don't know what I would have done without you." "No problem, Naruto. It was actually a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. Make sure to come back if you ever need any help, or if you decide to get more plants." "Sure thing, Ino-chan. Well, I'll see you later." With that, Naruto began to jog off in the direction of his house. As Ino went back to work, she was suddenly hit by what he had said as he left. "Ino-chan, since when have I ever been Ino-chan?" She thought that she should be furious with him for the term of affection, but for some reason it didn't sound so bad. Flashback end. Naruto still came to the flower shop often and still called her Ino-chan when they were talking alone. But when they were at school, he never let on that they really knew each other outside of it. She was still trying to figure out how she felt about that. As he watched Sasuke struggling to free himself from his assailants, Jaga heard a slight chuckle coming from his side. He looked over to see Naruto apparently trying to hold back his laughter at the scene. "Poor Sasuke, he said with a large grin. "We are fortunate enough that Ino and Sakura scare so many fangirls that even ours don't try to come after us when they're around. Sasuke is the only one who has to suffer while we are actually in class." Even as he watched his Otuto laugh, Jaga could see the hidden pain behind it. Naruto was trying to hide it, but Jaga had figured it out a long time ago. Ever since the first day, Naruto had started coming back from the flower shop with a gentle smile on his face, and the slight pain that showed through every time Sasuke was got his daily glompings. Naruto really likes Ino, but being the type of person he was, he would never act on it. That fact alone was enough to make Jaga want to strangle his brother, especially since he could also tell that Ino didn't put as much heart into glomping Sasuke as she used to. This made him wonder if her feelings for him were lessening and Naruto might have a chance. If only he could find a way to confirm it. But for now he just had to watch in silent frustration as his Otuto hid his pain from the world behind his mask yet again. Deciding enough was enough, Jaga used his ace in the hole to stop the glomping session and pull his brother out of his depression. "Well, today is the day of the exam, so I guess it is time to prove to you both that I am right about how we can get Iruka-sensei one last time." He knew that the bait would work, so he just sat back and waited for them to bite. Sasuke and Naruto's attention immediately turned from the fangirls to Jaga, with Sasuke practically throwing the two girls off him in order to respond. "There is no way I will believe it until I see it." he stated with defiance. I agree, Ni-san, Naruto said, there is just no way it could be true. Well, Iruka-sensei should be here any minute, so he will be able to test my theory then, won't we? Jaga said with a bit of a smirk. As if on cue, Iruka walked through the door and started yelling for the class to settle down. He froze up however when he saw the slightly evil looks his three, as he liked to playfully call them, archenemies were giving him. He knew what was about to happen. Iruka-sensei, today is the day we will finally finish this once and for all. Jaga stated, the challenge in his voice clearly evident. Do your worst, boys, I withstood your last attack and I feel no need to fear this one. It was true, he had survived their last attempt on him. He now felt if he could survive that with no blood loss, he could take anything. The trio took their positions next to each other. Are you prepared, Iruka-sensei? Jaga asked. The entire class was on the edge of their seat, excited to find out what would happen with this finale challenge. Do your worst, boys, Iruka said confidently. Let's do it, Naruto yelled, and soon three voices yelled Henge all at once. And there they were, the source of all his prior blood loss. Iruka could only brace himself for what they would throw at him this time. Furthest to the right stood a beauty with bright blonde hair put up in two pigtails and gorgeous blue eyes. Even the whisker marks only seemed to add to her beauty. Next to her stood the second beauty. This girl had long free-falling brown hair and beautiful bright green eyes that rivaled even the blue of the blonde. Finally there came the last of his worries, the just as equally beautiful black-eyed angel. Her pitch black hair was in a single ponytail that ran down her back. Last time they had rushed him, and began rubbing their perfect bodies against him. But Iruka had boldly withstood, and thwarted the blood that wished to flee from his nose. He knew he was prepared for anything they might throw at him. That was until he realized that it was not him that they planned on rubbing on. Oh no, it was so much more devastating than that. The three beautiful girls began rubbing on each other. The brown-haired girl stood behind the blonde, slowly caressing her down her side and across her stomach, while at the same time the black-haired girl was crouched low, with her face very close to were on the blonde, and stroked the blonde's legs sensually while looking at him with longing in her eyes. Iruka-sama, the brown-haired girl said pleadingly. Please don't leave us to do this alone. After that she took her bottom lip in between her teeth, while looking at him with a sensual pout. Now in Iruka's defense, he had held up incredibly up to that point. But at those words, and that final look, he did what any other non-gay, red-blooded male would have done. He got a nosebleed that launched him over his desk, and straight into the blackboard, where after falling to the ground, he lost enough blood to make everyone present start to wonder if he would truly survive. With 3 puffs of smoke, the trio of boys once again stood where previously the objects of all men's desires had stood. Naruto and Sasuke stood with looks of shock on their face, and Jaga with a triumphant one on his. Ha, I told you it would work and you didn't believe me. Now pay up, Jaga said with a huge grin, as the 2 other boys sullenly took out their wallets and handed him some money. I just don't get it. Sasuke suddenly shouted. Why would it work when we rubbed on each other, but not when we rubbed on him? Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Wouldn't any guy rather have the beautiful women rubbing on him than each other? Naruto said with a confused look. Oh my poor, innocent little boys, it is times like this that shows how much you truly have to learn. Jaga said with a sympathetic smile. One day you will understand the joys of seeing women engaging each other in such activities and more. And then, truly, ye shall be considered men. Naruto and Sasuke looked at the boy in front of them who was grinning from ear to ear at their confusion, then at each other, then at the rest of the class to see their reaction to Jagae's speech. Most of the boys looked as confused as they felt, though there were some that were nodding their heads solemnly in agreement, and some were even blushing deep scarlet, along with every girl in the room. The 3 of you get to your seats now, Iruka yelled, having finally come back to the world of consciousness. He had Kleenex shoved up both nostrils to stop the blood flow and did not seem pleased to have lost so spectacularly to the 3 boys. Damn, he thought, I should have known not to underestimate Jaga. The only pleasure he could pull from his defeat was the knowledge that this was the last time they would be able to do that to him. All right, now that we are all here, it is time to start your graduation exams. Everyone in the classroom tensed up in excitement at Iruka's announcement. After 4 years of training, they were finally going to be able to become shinobi. Naruto was easily the most excited and the most nervous of them all. He wanted nothing more than to pass and make his brother proud, but he knew he was screwed if they gave the Bunshin no Jutsu for the exam final. Of all the skills they had learned, Naruto could almost keep up with his brother and Sasuke in everything but that, with his clones always coming out sickly or dead. Naruto's thoughts once again turned to Jaga, the 2-year-older brother he idolized. He looked behind him to where his brother sat, and silently started to snigger. He remembered time when the Hokage had first asked Jaga if he was interested in becoming a shinobi of the leaf. Jaga had only tilted his head to the side, and calmly asked, "What the hell is a shinobi?" It was quickly decided he would have to start from year 1 in Naruto's class. Jagae's first day at the academy had been interesting to say the least. Naruto let his mind wander back to his favorite part of it. Flashback. They were going over different weapons a shinobi will use, and came to the most known and used of them all. The kunai. Every student was required to take a few and throw them at the target. Sasuke of course got a perfect score. Most of the students had made them at least a most of theirs stick. Hell, even Naruto had planted one in the target. Jaga however, not only didn't stick the target, he missed every shot by at least 10 feet. However, he didn't seem to mind at all when the other students, except Naruto, didn't want to, and Sasuke, who never did anyways, started to laugh. He just shrugged and said, "I don't like how these things feel." The others were probably about to start telling him to stop making up excuses or something, when they noticed he was walking back towards the weapons table. This time however, instead of picking up a kunai, he grabbed a stack of shuriken. He started walking back to the throwing line again, but before he had even gotten there he had already started throwing them. The shock that went through students and teachers alike was highly evident as they watched the first one hit in the dead center. The ones following landed within millimeters to the left and right of the first, and the next ones next to those, and so on. In the end there were 10 shuriken in the target and not one of them outside the bullseye. As everyone stared at him with dumbfounded expressions, the teachers asked him if he had ever used shuriken before. "Not that I can remember," was the answer they received. When another teacher asked how he had managed to use them so well without training, Jaga just shrugged casually and stated, "I like the way they feel." Flashback end. To this day, Jaga was completely unrivaled at using shuriken, and completely hopeless when it came to kunai. In fact, his favorite thing to do when they had kunai practice was to throw all the shuriken he carried at the furthest away tree, very clearly and neatly spelling, "I hate kunai." Naruto still laughed hysterically every time he did it. Across the room from Naruto, Sasuke was also looking back at Jaga and thinking back to the day he had showed up. Unlike Naruto however, his thoughts were not on the kunai incident. Sasuke's thoughts were focused on later in the day. The event that had been the reason Jaga always sat in the back right corner of class where no one could get behind him without being seen first. Flashback. The class had just come back inside from their lesson on shinobi weapons, and Sasuke was none too pleased. He had scored perfectly with his kunai, and the new kid had failed miserably. But Jaga had more than made up for with how he had excelled in shuriken. Sasuke was positive that even he would not be able to keep that many shuriken within the small circle that was the bull's eye. It was for this reason a very pissed off Uchiha was glaring at the sunglass-wearing kid, and managed to see exactly what happened. Naruto was talking to Jaga, most likely about his display with the shuriken, when a boy sitting behind them reached out and touched Jagae's shoulder to get his attention. Almost too fast for Sasuke to follow, the boy was suddenly flung over Jaga, landing solidly on his back on the desk in front of him. Jagae's sword was halfway out of its sheath before Naruto realized what was happening and, after grabbing his arm to keep the sword from being drawn, started yelling Jagae's name. Jaga seemed to freeze at first, then he slowly looked at Naruto. As if remembering where he was, he let his sword slide back into its sheath. At the same time he began to apologize to the boy he had just attacked. Sasuke had felt something though. He didn't know what it was, but it had made him a bit nervous. He had also wondered what kind of life makes someone so young so quick to attack. Even though Sasuke had been being trained since he was little, he did not have an attack reflex like that. Can you imagine what would have happened to all those glomping girls if he did? After that, Iruka had made that back right corner Jagae's permanent seat in order to avoid anything like that happening again in the future. Flashback end. That incident had also marked him as a fangirl target instantly from that point on. The way he had reacted, combined with his choice of clothes that hid most of his body, not to mention the sunglasses he wore that hid his eyes so effectively, made him the target of all the mystery man lovers. It also did not help that, no matter how open he may seem these days, he outright refused to answer any questions about his past. The little that he could remember that was. However, before Sasuke could muse on his current train of thought any longer, he was brought back to the present when Iruka began to make the announcement that the test was about to start. We are now going to begin taking you one at a time into the next room. We will be going in the order of clan names. Meaning Jaga, seeing as you have no clan name, you will go first. Iruka stated. Hi. Jaga sighed as he got up. That was one of the other things people found strange about him. He was legally Naruto's brother, but he refused to take on his clan name. When someone would ask him about his decision, he would simply state, I won't taint anyone else's name, especially Naruto's. Then he would simply go about his business, leaving the questioner to wonder what he could possibly mean with his statement. Jaga gave Naruto a quick encouraging grin as he began to walk out the door, which Naruto gave back in full force. As soon as Jaga had left though, a fairly worried look took its place, as he silently prayed to Kami. Please let it be anything but Bunshin no Jutsu. Where is he? Jaga asked. Sasuke only nodded in the direction of the swing, where Naruto sat, looking sad and alone. Damn it, out of all the things they had to choose from, they just had to go and make it the Bunshin. Jaga said sadly. Shaking his head, he turned to Sasuke. Let's go see what we can do for him. Sasuke nodded, and both of them began to walk to Naruto. Until they were suddenly stopped by a group of swooning fangirls who just had to congratulate them. Shit, why now? Jaga thought furiously. He was getting ready to just shove his way through when he noticed something. Of the two normal front runners of the Sasuke horde, one was missing. Glancing around quickly, he managed to spot Ino. The sight he saw almost made want to shout in triumph. Ino was standing slightly apart from the crowd, looking directly at Naruto, with sadness filling her eyes. She was currently in a mental debate with herself. On one hand, she wanted to go over and try to cheer Naruto up, but on the other she was afraid that by trying she would just make him feel worse. To top that off, Naruto had usually acted a bit distant with her when they were at school, so she wasn't sure if he wanted her to even act like she cared. So she just stood there, completely unable to decide if she should move forward or back. Jaga could practically see what Ino was thinking right now. He could only hope that she would make the decision to go to Naruto. As he stood there mentally cheering her on, he saw her face take on a slightly surprised look. Following her gaze back to Naruto, Jaga began to curse every god he could think of just to be sure he got the one that seemed determined to screw up Naruto's life. Standing by Naruto was none other than Mizuki. He was talking with Naruto and seemed to have asked him to go somewhere with him, since Naruto started to get off the swing. Jaga was determined to stop Naruto from going anywhere, and was just about to rush forward to stop him, when he was suddenly knocked back by a fangirl who had just slammed into his stomach as she wrapped her arms around him and started to congratulate him. Having temporarily lost sight of Naruto, Jaga instantly looked to the swing to see that both Naruto and Mizuki were gone. He then looked at Ino to see her walking away with a forlorn expression on her face. Jaga yet again began cursing whatever god seemed to hate Naruto so much. He was also wondering how much trouble he would get in if he stuck a few shuriken up Mizuki's ass for screwing up Ino's chance to comfort Naruto. Naruto sat with Mizuki on the roof that Mizuki had led them to. Neither had spoken since they got here. They had just been staring at the setting sun. Naruto, Iruka didn't want to fail you, you know. Mizuki finally said. He just wants you to be strong, since he sees so much of himself in you. He also knows how much you love your brother, but he wants you to see that Jaga can't always be there to make everything right again. I know that, Naruto said, barely holding back his tears. It's just that I wanted so badly to make him proud of me. To show him he didn't always have to be there to make it right, that I could take care of myself, but I screwed up and now I can't even face him. He buried his face in his knees knowing that he could not hold back the tears for long, and not wanting Mizuki to see him cry. You know Naruto, there may just be a way for you to still pass the exam, and show your brother exactly what you wanted to. Mizuki said. Naruto's face shot up instantly, his face longing for any hope, no matter how small it might be. Jaga and Sasuke had been searching for Naruto for several hours now. They had looked everywhere they could possibly think of him to go with no luck. Sasuke had decided to go check the apartment again to see if Naruto had gone home while they were out searching, which left Jaga searching alone on the outskirts of the village. He was considering going to check at the Hokage monument again, when he spotted Mizuki moving along the rooftops a ways away, moving towards an area of the forest that Jaga had yet to check. Even though Jaga still wanted to carry out his shuriken idea, he knew he had more important things to worry about right now, so he decided to save it for later. Well, he was the last person I saw Naruto with. Maybe he'll know where to find him. Jaga mused to himself. Picking up his pace, he headed in the direction Mizuki had gone. Naruto couldn't do anything as he watched Mizuki getting ready to throw the Fuma shuriken. Still being in shock after what he had been told, everything seemed to be going in slow motion. His mind was racing as he saw the weapon start to fly towards him. It can't be true, can it? Am I really a demon? All the glares, all the beatings were because I'm the demon who killed so many people. But I'm not a demon, I can't be. But what if I am? Does that mean I really do deserve to die? No, it wasn't me. I didn't do it, I never asked for this. I can't really be a demon. Can I? Naruto's conscious mind again noticed the shuriken coming at him and he knew that he was going to die. Demon or human, it wouldn't matter soon. He found that strangely comforting. He vaguely registered the injured Iruka running towards him, but it didn't matter. Naruto knew it was too late. He closed his eyes and waited for the end to come. Clang, smash. Those two sounds caused Naruto's eyes to snap open. Directly in front of him was Iruka, apparently planning to take the hit for Naruto. The look on his face, though, said that was not what had happened. Iruka turned his head to face behind him, and Naruto leaned over to look around his sensei. Jaga stood about 6 feet behind Iruka with his sword drawn, and in a position that looked as if he had just used a downward slash, while the Fuma shuriken was embedded in the ground just behind Iruka's feet. Seeing his older brother there made Naruto both happy and terrified at the same time. He had no idea what Jaga had heard. If he had heard that Naruto had a demon inside him, how would he react? Would he start to see Naruto as a demon as well? Would he leave him alone again? Just thinking these things hurt more than Naruto would have ever thought possible. He was on the verge of breaking down in tears when Jaga spoke, his voice low but still very clear. Naruto, tell me, just who and what you are. Naruto couldn't believe it. His brother really did think he was a demon. He felt like his heart was falling apart, making razor-sharp shards to continue tearing at his insides. His head fell in defeat and heartache. Since you can't seem to answer, then I'll do it for you. Jaga said, straightening up and resheathing his sword with his back to Naruto and Iruka. You are a lazy ass in the morning that has to be dragged out of bed to be on time for school. You tend to be loud and obnoxious and used to wear the most frightening clothes I have ever seen. You are currently one of the most fangirl-wanted boys in school and the best friend of Uchiha Sasuke. Jaga looked up at the sky as he continued. You are also one of the kindest and most caring people I have ever met. Someone who can make anyone feel better just by being around them. You are someone who has stayed kind and caring even when being treated like shit by the people around you. You are Uzumaki Naruto. But most importantly, Jaga then turned around and looked directly at Naruto, a gentle smile on his face. You are my Otuto, and that is all that matters. Naruto couldn't speak as he looked at his brother. Everything he had just heard slowly seeped into his mind, and he fully understood what Jaga had just said. Before he could stop himself, and he doubted he would have anyways. He just threw himself at his brother and hugged him tightly as the tears fell. He didn't care if anyone saw him crying. He didn't care that he had been told he was a demon. He didn't even care anymore about what had happened to him in the past. All he cared about was that his brother still saw him exactly as he did before, as his Otuto. Standing behind them, Iruka could not stop his own tears from forming as he watched the two brothers. He could practically feel the love the two brothers had for each other, and he could not help but feel proud of and happy for both of them. The touching moment was short-lived though, as the forgotten Mizuki decided he had had enough and jumped down from his spot in the tree. HMFF, I had hoped that you only accepted that thing because you were ignorant of what he was, but it would seem that you are no better than that demon you call a brother," Mizuki said with nasty sneer. Both Naruto and Jaga looked over at the sneering Mizuki. They slowly broke apart, Naruto glaring at the traitor teacher in anger. Jagae's hand had begun to rise to the hilt of his sword again, when it was suddenly stopped by Naruto. "Ni-san, could you let me handle him?" Naruto asked. Jaga looked at Naruto, and was about to tell Naruto that he would take care of it, but then he saw the look in the deep blue eyes of his Otuto. Jaga did not want to let him, knowing that Naruto could get hurt. But deep down, he also knew that Naruto needed this. "All right, but you better kick his ass," Jaga said. Naruto nodded with confidence. Turning to Mizuki, he smirked at the traitor. "Oi, Mizuki Teme, I just figured out a way to accomplish my goal without having to graduate." Naruto made a cross-shaped seal and yelled, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." Iruka could only look on in amazement as he saw hundreds of Narutos suddenly filling the forest. In the trees, on the ground surrounding them, they were everywhere. From what Iruka could tell, Jaga had been shocked as well when all the clones appeared, but now he seemed to also have a slightly confused frown. Mizuki only had one thing on his frightened mind as the hundreds of Narutos closed in on him. "I am so fucked. Okay Naruto, you can open them now." Naruto slowly opened his eyes when he heard Iruka's voice, only to see said Chunin sitting in front of him with no hite on his forehead, and a widely grinning Jaga standing behind him. "Congratulations Naruto, you passed," Iruka said with huge smile. Naruto, losing all control, jumped onto the injured man and started fiercely hugging and thanking him. After a loud "Itai" from Iruka, Naruto backed off and started apologizing while rubbing the back of his head. He felt a gentle hand come to rest on his shoulder and looked up at the face of his older brother, who, with a gentle smile, said the words that completed turning one of the worst days in Naruto's life into one of the best. "I'm proud of you Otuto." Naruto was completely happy now. He knew there was no way this day could get any better. "Well, my injuries don't seem as bad as I first though. So why don't I take you both out for some ramen to celebrate your graduation?" Iruka said. Okay, now there was no way it could get any better. Naruto started jumping up and down screaming, "Ramen," at the top of his voice. No matter how many times Jaga tried to teach Naruto about having more control, his newly acquired discipline always seemed to disappear at the very mention of ramen. "You two go on ahead," Jaga said. "I'll catch up once I deal with Mizuki." Iruka figured he must have meant handing him over to Anbu or something, so he agreed. With Naruto's help, he stood up, and the two of them began leaving the forest in the direction of Ichiraku's. Mizuki groaned as consciousness slowly returned to him, his body feeling like he had just rolled down a very rocky mountain. The last thing he remembered was the hundreds of Naruto clones closing in on him from all sides. "God-damned demon brat," Mizuki said as he painfully opened his eyes. "I swear I am going to," whatever he had planned on saying died on his lips when he saw who was standing over him. Mizuki felt like he was looking at the devil himself as he stared up at Jaga. There was no emotion, no facial expression, and because of his sunglasses no way to see his eyes, just a feeling of icy calm that froze Mizuki to his soul. "You were right about one thing tonight Mizuki," Jaga said in calm voice. "I am no better than Naruto. No one is better than Naruto. His love and kindness knows no bounds, even to the point that he willingly spares someone that tried to kill him." He said the last part with a little more force in his voice. "That is why I will never be better than Naruto, I am not so forgiving." Jagae's hand reached up and gripped the hilt of his sword. It made a steely hiss as it slowly came out of its sheath. "I am also a firm believer in the saying, dead enemies don't cause more problems." He reversed his grip on his sword and struck. Mizuki could only watch in horror as the sword came free. The killing intent that had begun to radiate off Jaga with the drawing of his sword was incredible, even though the icy calm never left him. "Who the hell is he?" was the last thing that ran through his mind just before Jagae's sword drove into his heart. Jaga wiped his sword using a piece of the now dead Mizuki's shirt. He didn't even need to turn around to know who had just shown up at the scene. He was actually surprised it took them this long. "I plan on going to see the Hokage sometime tomorrow. Tonight I need to make sure that Naruto is really okay after everything that happened to him today," he said to the group standing behind him. Resheathing his sword, he then turned around to look at the group of 4 Anbu he had grown familiar with through the years. Couldn't you have waited to kill Mizuki until after he questioned him? The man who was the leader and wore a painted eagle mask asked with a slight sigh. He might have had some connections we needed to know about. Well then, don't take so long to get here next time, Jaga said with a slight smirk as he started to walk away. Now if you'll excuse me, I have to meet Naruto and Iruka sensei for some ramen. The 4 Anbu watched him in silence as he walked away. Finally the man in the eagle mask turned to his 3 subordinates. Well, let's get this cleaned up before we report to the Hokage. Jaga walked up to the ramen stand where Iruka and Naruto were already eating happily. Iruka seemed to be trying to tell Naruto of the dangers that the life of a shinobi would entail, but Naruto was too busy slurping his noodles to pay much attention. Jaga could not help but smile at the scene. Sorry it took so long, Jaga said as he sat down next to Naruto. That wasn't long at all really, Iruka said, while Naruto continued to slurp. What did you end up doing with Mizuki? A group of Anbu showed up, so I just left the cleanup to them, Jaga stated in an offhanded manner as he was handed a bowl of ramen by a Yame. Well, at least we know that Mizuki will be taken care of. I hope they give him an appropriate punishment, Iruka said seriously. Don't worry sensei, I am positive he was dealt with appropriately, Jaga said. He then began slurping noodles right alongside Naruto. Could you not have waited to kill him until after he questioned him? The Sandame said in a slightly tired voice. Jaga had finally come in to report the incident from the night before. He tried to kill Naruto, old man. He was not walking away alive, Jaga said in a very calm voice. Sarutobi just sighed a little at the comment. Truth be told, he fully supported Jagae's decision in the matter, considering how fond the Sandame was of Naruto. But being Hokage meant the old man had to at least make it seem as if he were trying to look at the matter in an unbiased way. We still needed to see what other ties or accomplices he might have had. At least try to think about these types of things next time. The Hokage finished. I will see what I can do, but I won't make any promises. So how is Naruto doing after finding out? The Sandame asked. Concern for was Naruto clearly evident in his voice. A lot better than I thought he would, but I think he is still a bit shaken about finding out about the Kyuubi. Knowing that you have been hated all your life for something you had no choice in can be a bit painful, Jaga answered. His tone was mild, but the Hokage clearly felt the spike of killing intent that briefly radiated from the boy in front of him. Jaga was very pissed off at how Naruto had been treated. I am truly sorry for what has happened to him in the past, but there was nothing I could do about it. The villagers hated and feared the Kyuubi, so they take it out on his jailer. There is no cure for the stupidity of a human, I am sorry to say. The fact that it is stupidity is the only thing keeping them alive. Since I met Naruto, I decided, for his sake, that I would not kill people just for being stupid. Despite how he has been treated, he still cares about this village and its people. It would break his heart to find out I was killing them off. So I take it he does not know about the ones you have killed then. What Naruto doesn't know won't hurt him. Besides, I claim self-defense in regards to the previously mentioned deaths. It was not my fault they decided they needed to kill the protector of the demon. I just did to them what they wanted to do to me. You should at least be happy that I spared the drunks, and only killed the sober ones that knew exactly what they were doing, Jaga said, his voice never losing that calm tone. The Sandame gave off a slight sigh. You are aware that you are now a shinobi of the leaf, correct? It is your duty to protect the village and its people. I will, unless they decide to start attacking me again. The second they do, they will be nothing more than enemies, and you are well aware of my philosophy on enemies. The old man could only nod at the response. He knew it was coming anyway. I guess that we just have to hope for them to continue to leave you alone then. He paused to take a drag from his pipe. So tell me, what do you plan to do about Sasuke? He is the two of yours friend, is he not? Are you going to tell him about Naruto? That is up to Naruto. I personally think Sasuke should know, but Naruto is afraid to tell him. After the way he has been treated by the rest of the villagers, I can understand why. Naruto told me about a few times when someone would act like they accepted him, just to try to kill him when he let his guard down. Another spike of killing intent came and vanished instantly. Naruto may trust Sasuke, but some scars run too deep to ever truly be forgotten. I hope it goes well if he does tell him. The Sandaime really wanted to get off the subject of the villagers. I believe in Sasuke. He will be fine with it. Jagae's voice got a little hard as he continued. Sasuke has already seen that you don't have to have a demon inside of you, in order to be one. Sarutobi knew Jaga was talking about Sasuke's brother Itachi. He could only agree with the assessment of the boy in front of him on the older Uchiha. It was time for this meeting to end though. The killing intent spikes were starting to work the old mont's nerves. Let's go ahead and end our little talk here, shall we? I was going to ask you to sit in on a few meetings I have later with some dignitaries, but you probably want to go look after Naruto. Jaga turned and started towards the door as he said, actually Naruto is with Sasuke right now. He came by earlier to see if Naruto had been found. The two of them left together planning to spar before I came to see you. I am hoping that Naruto will tell Sasuke when they are training, but like I said, that is up to Naruto. Jaga walked out the door without a backwards glance. The old man chuckled at the teen's hasty departure. He made sure to get out the door before I could tell him the times of the meetings. He must really hate them, but it's his fault for having such a useful, if not uncanny, ability. The Hokage then looked up at the pictures that hung on his wall, focusing the one of a blonde man. Naruto has a rather interesting guardian angle, wouldn't you say, Arashi? Break. Jaga breathed a sigh of relief as he walked down the streets of Konoha. He had managed to get out of the Hokage tower without the old man getting him to commit to sitting in on those damn meetings. Not that he minded helping the old man out now and then, it was just that they were so damn boring. A couple stuck-up dignitaries being overly polite while trying to gain some kind of favor from the powerful shinobi village. If it weren't for his little talent, as Jaga sometimes referred to it, he would not have to sit in on those meetings at all. Sometimes he really hated it. But at least it kept him honest. He was regretting one thing a little though. Throughout the course of the conversation he had forgotten that he had wanted to talk to the Hokage about something he had seen last night. Even though now he was starting to doubt if he had really seen it at all. Naruto had just used his new technique and the forest was filled with other Narutos. Jaga had watched in amazement as his brother, who could not even do the regular Bunshin no Jutsu, had just pulled the Junin level Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The weird thing though was that as they charged Mizuki, Jaga could swear he saw them all turn into blue energy with a human shape. But it passed so fast he doubted his eyes, especially since Iruka had not seemed to notice anything. He was running the event through his mind again when he felt a familiar chakra's signature pull up beside him. Looking over he saw that a pretty woman with long dark red hair and bright green eyes walking beside him. He knew she was in a henge. It was standard procedure for all of them to be in a henge when they talked to him without their masks. He was not supposed to know who they were after all. So what do you want today, kitten? Jaga said to the only woman in the four-man Anbu squad that always followed him around. Since he didn't know their names, he made some up for them based on the mask they wore. She wore a cat, so she was kitten. The hanged woman looked at him with an amused expression. The boss wants us to keep an eye on you today, just in case you feel a need to vent some fury on any passing villagers. Tell Bird Brain to shove it up his ass. He knows I don't attack first, I never have. Jaga and the eagle mask-wearing leader of the four Anbu did not get along very well. Jaga wondered if it was because the first time they had met, Jaga asked him if it meant anything that he wore a chicken mask. It really did look like one back then, but it seemed that the mask-wearing man took great offense to the remark. Now they just seemed to get on each other's nerves. How'd I know you would say that? Kitten said as she closed her eyes and laughed. When she opened them she noticed Jaga was shaking his head, as if to clear it. What's wrong? Jaga was really starting to worry about his eyesight. For just a moment when Kitten had laughed her hair turned jet black and she seemed a little shorter. But the changes had disappeared as soon as he saw them. Maybe I need to get more sleep. It's nothing, I just think I'm starting to see things. Jaga said with a small laugh. He then remembered something that had been bugging him and decided to ask Kitten about it. Hey Kitten, while I was talking with the old man earlier, the subject of my past little incidents with some of the villagers came up. As we talked about it I realized something. I have never once been attacked by a ninja, only regular villagers. I am not stupid enough to think that there are no leaf shinobi that would attack me for protecting Naruto. Just as I am not arrogant enough to think I would have survived if they had. So I was wondering if you four had anything to do with it. Wow, the Jaga admitting that he could have been in trouble if a few ninja came after him. She knew he was about to say something on that, so she continued. As a matter of fact, we have had to, shall we say, convince a few shinobi that attacking you would be highly frowned upon. You could almost say we are your guardian angels, just like you are Naruto's. She had a huge smile on her face as she finished. I don't know about guardian angels. I would compare Bird Brain to a vindictive murderer who wants to kill me himself and gets rid of anyone who may take that privilege away from him. And I think you might be more like a stalker who won't let anyone else near your crush. The other two maybe could qualify. I think the worst thing about that is the fact that's really what you're comparing us to. Well, sorry to disappoint you, but I am not into younger guys. Though, you might be right about the boss. She put her finger to her chin thoughtfully. So do you plan on following me around all day still? Jaga asked. Actually no, I don't. I have already thought of a way to keep you out of trouble, and punish you for all the paperwork I had to do on Mizuki's death. The evil glint that came to her eyes made Jaga a little nervous. What are you planning to do to me? Jaga asked. He was trying hard to hide his nervousness about what she had in mind. Oh, just this. She then raised her head and yelled at the top of her voice. Oh my god, Jaga-kun, I am so glad I found you. Would you go out with me tonight? It was almost instantaneous. As soon as the words left her lips, they were suddenly surrounded by raging fangirls, not just his either. Sasuke's and Naruto's had shown up too, knowing that wherever Jaga was, the other two were sure to be there. You are an evil woman, do you know that? Jaga said as he looked frantically for an escape. Her only response was to laugh evilly as she disappeared in a puff of smoke. Jaga saw the eyes of the Naruto and Sasuke lovers narrow on him dangerously. They wanted to know where the objects of their affections were, and they were willing to help capture Jaga to get the information. Jaga might be able to escape his own group of fangirls, but if the other two groups joined in the chase, he was doomed. So he did the only thing he could in that situation. He would make it up to Naruto and Sasuke later. Naruto and Sasuke like to use Area 11 when training. They also like to be comfortable when they spar, so they tend to take their shirts off. Jaga yelled at the girls. With a loud gasp and an excited squeal, 2/3 of the horde of girls ran off in the direction of Training Ground 11. Jaga then made a break through one of the holes left by the two groups leaving and proceeded to run for his life. Swearing to both make it up to Naruto and Sasuke for what was about to them, and somehow reap a terrible vengeance upon Kitten. Break. Naruto and Sasuke walked in silence to the training field. Sasuke had tried to strike up a conversation a few times, but Naruto was too lost in thought to respond to the Uchiha with more than a few grunts. Sasuke had been struck with a strange sense of role reversal from their younger days the whole way. Naruto was at odds with himself. On one hand, he was afraid to tell Sasuke about the secret he held inside himself. He had been betrayed too many times by people he thought he could trust, to be completely sure of how Sasuke would take the news. On the other hand, his brother was right that if Sasuke was truly his friend, it would not matter to him if Naruto held a demon inside of him. Jagae's words kept running through Naruto's mind. Naruto, you need to tell him. I know that you are afraid of getting hurt again, but you have to do it. I mean, think about it. If you can't even tell the person that you call your best friend without being afraid, then who will you ever be able to tell? Naruto knew Jaga was right, but he could not find the courage to form the words. He tried the whole way to do it, but they just wouldn't come out. When they finally got to the training grounds, he decided on an approach more along the lines of what his brother might use. Hey Sasuke, have you ever had something important to tell someone, but were afraid to do it because of how they might react? Sasuke looked at him for a moment before answering. What, you mean like confessing to a girl you like, and being rejected? Naruto flinched a little at that. It made him think of Ino. He had liked her for a while now, but would never tell her because of how she seemed to be so obsessed with Sasuke. There were two outcomes that he could think of to confessing to her. One, that she'd tell him that she liked Sasuke and that she and Naruto would never be more than friends. Two, that she says the same thing, minus the friend part, and that he has to stop going to the flower shop because she feels uncomfortable around him. Meaning he would almost never get to see her. While Naruto might be able to handle the first, since Sasuke was his best friend and Naruto wanted him to be happy. He could not even bear to think about the second. So he opted to just keep his mouth about it. That's actually a really good comparison, Naruto said with a small chuckle. What could be so important that you would be afraid to tell someone? Sasuke asked. He was starting to get a little worried over his blonde friend's serious attitude. Something that has been kept secret for years, something that not even the person who had applied to knew about. Naruto was choosing his words carefully, just like Jaga had taught him. Sasuke, however, had known both Naruto and Jaga for a long time. So he knew all about how Jaga could tell the truth without saying it outright, or completely throw you off the truth without ever uttering a single false word, and since he felt like he was having a conversation with said person right now, it meant only one thing. Whatever Naruto was talking about involved Naruto himself, and the person he wanted to tell was Sasuke. I would tell them, Sasuke said in a comforting voice. If this person that needs to be told is truly the person who needs to tell friend, then that person will understand. Naruto got a small smile on his face. He knew Sasuke had figured it out. Then I think I need to tell you exactly what happened to me after I failed the test yesterday. You might want to sit down, or you may fall on your ass. Break. Sasuke fell on his ass hard. Whatever he had been expecting Naruto to tell him, that was not it. I mean, how often is it that your best friend tells you that he has the most powerful demon in existence sealed inside his stomach? Sasuke could only sit there, slowly processing the information as he looked up at Naruto. It didn't take too long though. As Sasuke looked at Naruto's rather anxious face, he came to a realization. Naruto may have the demon inside of him, but he was the furthest thing from a demon he had ever seen. Naruto was still just Naruto to him, an overly kind idiot who dreamed of becoming the Hokage, protecting the village and making his brother proud. When Sasuke's thoughts came to the villagers though, they were anything but pleasant. He started to remember all the times they had told him that he should stay away from Naruto, that he was nothing but a menace. Sasuke had always thought that they were talking about the way Naruto used to be, always pulling pranks and acting obnoxious. So for a while, early into getting to know Naruto, Sasuke had been inclined to agree. But now that he knew the real reason he had been told those things, Sasuke was pissed. His mind remembered every glare, every insult, every snide comment that had been directed at Naruto. All that hatred towards someone who not only had no say in what happened to him, but didn't even know about it until less than 12 hours ago. He also suddenly remembered a few times when he had seen Naruto going home with torn, blood-covered cloths. At the time Sasuke figured that Naruto had overdone it on training again. Now he had a new theory. Oh yeah, Sasuke was definitely pissed off now. Sasuke pulled himself out of his thoughts and looked up at Naruto again. His anger slowly died away as he saw the fear in Naruto's eyes, fear that Sasuke would start to think of him the same way the villagers did. It was time to fix that. Sasuke stood up, brushing the dirt and grass of his shorts as he did. He then looked Naruto square in the eye and put on his best smirk. Too bad that fox in you can't teach you how to fight better. A baka like you needs all the help you can get if you ever hope to beat me, he said calmly as he took off his shirt and got into a fighting stance. Naruto looked stunned for a few seconds. Then a grin slowly spread across his face. Taking his own shirt off, getting into his own stance, he happily responded to the challenge. I'm gonna make you eat those words, Teme. Their spar lasted for several hours before they finally stopped from exhaustion. Sitting back to back on the grass, they both had a feeling of peace of mind. I could never have asked for a better friend, you know that right? Naruto said to the raven-haired boy behind him. Of course you couldn't, I am Uchiha Sasuke after all, Sasuke said with a small laugh. You really are such a Teme, Naruto said with his own laugh, as the two of them continued to enjoy the tranquility around them. The peace was short-lived however. Suddenly they heard a loud shout that seemed to be coming from several females. There they are, and their shirts are off. Both boys looked to where the shout had come from, only to see a mass of girls heading directly at them. As they saw the mass closing the distance between them, both boys could only think one thing. Oh shit, run, Sasuke yelled. They were not sure if they could get away, but they were damn sure gonna try. Break. Kyogu was sitting behind the counter and casually examining some kunai that he was about to put in the display. When suddenly the front door of his weapons shop flew open, and somebody that almost resembled a shadow came in, slamming the door behind him. After his surprise, Kyogu took a closer look at his latest visitor. When he realized who it was, he was both intrigued and a bit apprehensive. Black pants, boots, and hoodie, check. Straight blade sword with black hilt wrapping on his back, check. Black sunglasses that completely hide his eyes, check. No doubt about it, he was looking at the infamous brother of the demon container Naruto. Jaga. Kyogo knew that Naruto was not really the demon and only the container. Just as he knew that Naruto was the only thing keeping everyone safe from the dreaded Kyuubi. That's why he was not revolted or upset to see his brother standing in his shop. The only question was, why was he there? He was considering asking, when he saw a group of girls standing outside his window. They seemed to be searching for something intently. It was also then that Kyogo noticed how tense the boy at the door seemed to be. As the girls moved on, the black-clad teen gave a sigh of relief that even a deaf man would have caught. Well, that answers that question. He was hiding, probably doesn't even know where he is right now. Kyogo decided to get the boy's attention before he could slip out the door in his continued escape. So kid, anything I can do for you? Jaga gave a slight start when he heard a voice come from behind him. He had been so focused on getting away that he did not even notice there was another person in the building he had just ducked into. Turning around, he saw that the other person was a well-built, middle-aged man, with dark brown hair, brown eyes and a highly amused expression on his face. Judging by your reaction, I would say that you did not know I was here. Kyogo said with a laugh. Jaga scratched the back of his head in embarrassment and gave a small chuckle. He had picked the habit up from Naruto and found that he liked it. I was a little distracted when I ducked in here. I didn't even know it was a weapons shop. For all I knew, it was some family's house. Kyogo was staring at the teen in front of him with interest, his earlier apprehension vanishing. All the stories he had heard about the young man made him out to be cold and ruthless. Completely shut off from everybody but Naruto. But here he was, scratching the back of his head and laughing in embarrassment at being caught unaware. Well, since you're here anyway, let's go back to my first question. Is there anything I can do for you? Jaga was thoughtful for a moment before he seemed to be struck by an idea. How long does it take to get a sharpening job done on a sword? He asked. Well, that depends on the sword. Cheap swords are easy to sharpen because the metal is subpar. Meaning it gets dull quickly but can be sharpened quickly. Well-made swords that use good metal take longer to sharpen, but will also hold the edge for quite a long time. Especially when used properly. So I guess what I am saying is that I would need to examine the sword to give you a good estimate. Okay, yeah, Kyogo could have just said anywhere from a few hours to a few days, but he really wanted to see the kid's sword. Kyogo watched as Jaga seemed to mull it over. Then the boy walked up to the counter, drawing his blade from its sheath as he did. I guess it won't hurt to find out how long mine would take, he said as he laid the sword on the counter. Kyogo picked up the blade carefully and began looking it over. His first thoughts when he saw the sword ones of slight shock. This is not the blade of someone so young, it can't be. Kyogo knew that all weapons told their own story, and the one he held in his hands was telling him a very painful one. Nicks, scratches and scars covered the blade, and there were traces of blood in some of them. Kyogo was shocked, but he hid it well. After all, the sword could have been handed down to Jaga. Kyogo needed more facts before jumping to conclusions. So how long have you had this? Kyogo asked as casually as he could. Well, let's see. It's been 4 years since I came to this village, plus the 3 or so years I can remember before then, so, at least 7 years now. Jaga replied casually. It was common knowledge that Jaga had no memory before a certain point in his life, but no one seemed to know more about him than that. Kyogo processed that as he asked his next question. Really? So how long have you been a shinobi then? Jagae's face took on an amused expression, and he looked up at the clock that hung on the wall behind the counter. Oh, about 22 hours now. Kyogo almost choked when he heard that. What, you look way too old to have just graduated from the academy. There is no way you can only be 12. Well, I'm actually 14, or at least that's what they decided, but anyway. Due to certain circumstances I was placed in the same class as my brother who is 2 years younger than me. That's why I only graduated yesterday. Jaga said. Kyogo was at a loss now. The boy standing in front of him was only 14, and he had never even been on a D-ranked mission. Much less on that could make his sword look like this. That would mean that it had happened before, most likely before he ever came to the village. Kyogo knew that all of the answers would come in his next question. Once again he made his voice as casual as possible, but this time he was watching the boy carefully. So how did this sword look when you first got it? If Kyogo hadn't been watching closely he would have missed it. Jage's expression showed no change, except for the slight shifting of skin near his eyes. He had narrowed them. It looked like a sword. Why? That was all the confirmation Kyogo needed. With that evasive answer the kid may as well have said it was brand new. Just what kind of life has this kid had? No reason, I just noticed that it seemed to have a metal in here that I haven't seen before. I was curious about the effect it may have had. Well, it wasn't a total lie. There was some strange metal in the alloy. So how long do you think it would take to sharpen my sword? Jaga asked. Well, it looks very well made, and because of the metal in here that I would have to identify. I would say at least 3 days. Is that acceptable? Since I don't know if I will need it for the team selections tomorrow. No, it isn't. However, once I know how things are going to work when I get my team, I will find the time to come by. With that, Jaga picked up his sword and began to leave. Before he got to the door he stopped and turned back around. Before I go, I have a question to ask you. Kyogo got a little nervous at the steel that seemed to come to the boy's voice. Maybe those rumors weren't so far off the mark after all. Ask away. Why are you being so friendly towards me? Kyogo didn't really know how to respond to that. In truth, he was trying to show the kid that not everybody thought of him and Naruto as menaces, but he was also worried that the kid would take offense to it, thinking it was pity or something. So he lied. Because you are a customer, of course, it is only right that I am polite to my customers, he said with a smile. Jaga looked at him for a moment and then asked another question. Do you know who I am? Not a clue. This is the first time we have met after all. Kyogo really just wanted the kid to feel comfortable around him, so he decided that feigning ignorance was probably the best choice. Jaga stared at him for a bit longer before he finally continued heading for the door. As he opened it to leave, he turned back to Kyogo once more. You know, it isn't nice to lie to your customers, but since I think you had good intentions behind it, I will let it slide. I'll see you again once I know I have time for my sword to be sharpened. With that said, he calmly walked out the door. Kyogo almost cut himself on the kunai he had been reaching for. How in the hell? Break. Jaga managed to get back to his apartment without drawing the attention of any still searching fangirls. One thing was for sure, he had to give them credit for persistence. When he climbed through the window he was a little surprised to see both Naruto and Sasuke already there. He started trying very hard to ignore his conscience on the fact both of them looked like they had been attacked by wild animals. You two look like shit. No kidding, Sasuke said as he looked up at the new arrival. We've spent the last 3 hours running from half the girls in the village. We were lucky we got away with our cloths on. What I can't understand is how they found us. They never have before, so why today? Naruto said from the floor where he was lying. Tell ya what, why don't you two get cleaned up and then we'll go out to eat tonight? You both look like you could use it. Yata, ramen, ramen, ramen. We don't always have to eat ramen dobi. Let's go somewhere we can get some real food for once. Jaga let out a relieved sigh as Naruto and Sasuke started arguing over where to go eat. He was glad his distraction had worked and they had not asked him about how they could have been found. His no-lying policy would have bit him in the ass then. Besides, he may have promised himself to make it up to them, but he had never promised to tell them exactly who had sold them out. So if they didn't ask, he wouldn't tell. Naruto, I swear, if you don't quit messing with that thing I am going to ban you from ramen for a week. Jaga said, annoyed. But I can't help it. Naruto said, as he once again adjusted his Hades 8. I still have trouble believing that I have it, and that the whole thing wasn't a dream or something. Well, you're annoying the crap out of me the way you keep playing with it. So leave it alone already. By the way, Ni-san, where's your Hades 8? Naruto asked. Both Sasuke and Naruto had theirs near their foreheads, but he could not see Jaga's anywhere. It's right here. It's more comfortable, Jaga said as he pointed to his waist. Naruto took a closer look and almost fell over. Instead of having the normal Hades 8 that was a gray steel plate with the leaf carved in it, stuck to a blue cloth. Jaga's was black steel with the leaf carving colored red set on a black cloth. With the rest of his cloths also being black, the only thing that was easy to see was the red leaf symbol. Did you paint that yourself? Sasuke asked, who had looked along with Naruto. Actually, I ordered it a couple weeks before we graduated. I just wasn't allowed to pick it up until I brought my official one as proof that I passed. No way was I wearing gray and blue. Jaga had an almost offended look on his face. Both Sasuke and Naruto sweat dropped. Don't you think that you may have a problem with the whole black thing, Nisan? I don't want to hear it from someone who stunts his growth eating nothing but ramen. Nani, what's wrong with ramen? Sasuke just shook his head as he listened to Naruto defend his favorite food. It's so easy to change the subject when you talk with Naruto. Just mention ramen and you're clear. Naruto was about to go into his favorite speech about the wonders of ramen, when the three boys heard the words that always chilled them to the bone. Sasuke-kun, Naruto-kun, Jaga-kun. They didn't even need to look back to know what was heading for them. Jaga immediately took charge. Run like hell. Iruka was surprised, to say the least, when his three favorite troublemakers came bursting through the classroom door, slamming it behind them. All three of them were sweating bullets and panting like they had just run around all of Konoha at top speed. Which actually they had. Are you three okay? Fan, girls. Huff. Found, us. Barley, wheeze. He escaped. Naruto said through his ragged breaths. The other two just nodded in confirmation, both breathing too hard to speak. Iruka laughed a little as he watched the three exhausted boys take their seats. Naruto and Sasuke actually following Jaga to the furthest back part of the class. Naruto's head went straight to the desk, while the other two leaned back with their arms hanging limply at their sides as the three of them tried to catch their breath. Well, no one else should show up for at least 20 minutes or so. So take it easy until then, Iruka said. He already knew they would, but he had to hide his enjoyment of their suffering somehow. Those three had put him through a lot over the years. He was still getting slight nosebleeds from the memory of their last triple attack with Oiroke no Jutsu. True enough, around 20 minutes later the rest of the class began to file in through the entrance. As soon as the room had begun to fill, both Jaga and Naruto had begun inching away from Sasuke, and all of them knew why. Sasuke-kun! Came the loud shout as two blurs, one pink and red, the other one blonde and purple, charged Sasuke at an incredible speed. Sasuke, however, was ready this time. Making the seals quickly, he used the Kawarimi. Sakura and Ino were more than a little surprised to find they had just glomped a very confused Naruto. What the hell are you doing, Sasuke-teme? Don't be making me take your glompings for you. Naruto yelled after he had finally figured out what had happened. Even if he was secretly happy to have been glomped by Ino, he would never tell anyone. Don't talk like that to Sasuke-kun, Sakura yelled as she tried to hit Naruto, who promptly dodged out of the way. I'll talk to him however I want. I mean, really, what sort of person would sacrifice his friend just to keep a couple girls from mauling him? Naruto said indignantly. Nobody noticed when Jaga started twiddling his thumbs and whistling innocently as he stared out the window. Everybody settle down and take your seats, Iruka said loudly to the class. The class quieted down instantly and Sakura and Ino, Sakura with a fair bit of grumbling, took their seats. I am now going to announce the teams. I want you all to remember that these teams were chosen by the Hokage himself and there will be no changes, Iruka said, emphasizing the last part. These teams have been carefully balanced in order to obtain maximum effectiveness. The class is not going to be happy about this. I'll begin giving you your teams now. Team 1 will be, as Iruka went down the list, felt his anxiety rise with every name. When he finally reached Team 7, he paused and took a deep breath. This next team is a bit unique. Due to an unexpected number of graduates, we have been forced to make a single 4-person team. Here it comes. Team 7 will consist of Yamanaka Ino, Uchiha Sasuke, Jaga, and Uzumaki Naruto. Silence filled the air for a moment as all of the names that were just said registered in each person's brain. Jaga recovered the fastest and quickly covered his ears. He barely made it in time. Nani! The ridiculously loud yell filled the room. Every girl in the classroom, along with a fair number of guys, shouted in outrage at the team announcement. Why are those three on a team? One boy shouted. I wanted to be on Sasuke, Jaga, Naruto-kun's team. Was the shout of every girl. How is that balanced? A few other boys shouted. This continued for about a full minute before Iruka had enough. All of you quiet down now. He yelled at the top of his voice, and being a teacher, that was pretty loud. The whole room grudgingly silenced. Nara Shikamaru took that as his opportunity to raise his hand. Sensei, you said yourself that the teams were balanced, but I don't see how that is true. Sasuke is the top rookie of the year, and Ino is the top female of the year. Then you put Jaga in, who is in the top 5, and even Naruto, who has managed to get to the top 10. It seems like the team is pretty stacked. Not to mention there are 4 of them, not just 3. You are correct on your assessment, Shikamaru, but like I said, there is a very good reason for this. All the Junin senseis have been informed of the reason, and have been permitted to tell you themselves if they choose to. I, however, was told by the Hokage personally, not to tell you as a class. Shikamaru leaned back in his seat and let off an audible, troublesome, as he did. Now if you will all let me finish the telling you your teams. Team 8 will have Hyuga Hinata, Inuzuka Kiba, and Aburame Shino. Team 9 will be. Ino was still reeling over the fact that she was in the same group as all 3 of the most desired boys of her year. She would be ecstatic, and definitely rubbing it in Sakura's face, if it were not for the steady stream of killing intent that seemed to be coming from all around her. Ino knew that the rest of the girls were not happy in the least that she managed to get all 3 of them in her group. Finally, Group 10 will consist of Haruno Sakura, Nara Shikamaru, and Akamichi Choji. That is all for the groups. Now you will simply have to wait until your Junin sensei gets here. Iruka then left the classroom to go inform the Junin that were already present that they could pick up their students. Ino could feel every girl's eyes on her, and it was really making her nervous. She almost attacked when she felt a hand gently touch her shoulder. Almost fearfully, she looked up to see a pair of deep cerulean eyes looking into hers. "You want to come over and sit with us, Ino-chan?" Naruto said in a whisper. "It might be safer for you." He looked around pointedly at all the angry stares she was receiving. Considering the killing intent directed at her had not gone down in the slightest. Ino rather quickly agreed. Where Ish? Naruto said in annoyance. He wanted to start yelling, but considering Jaga had fallen asleep a while ago, he was trying very hard not to. Naruto didn't feel like being thrown through a closed window again like the last time he had woken Jaga up because he was yelling. Yes, Jaga could be grouchy when he first woke up. Having been waiting so long had made Naruto decided that their late new sensei needed a bit of punishing. Grabbing an eraser off the chalkboard, he began to place it between the door and the door jamb. "Naruto, what are you doing?" Ino asked as she watched Naruto at work. "I'm teaching our new sensei that it isn't polite to keep people waiting," he said as he stepped back to observe his work. "Baka, that will never work. Our new sensei is a Junin. He wouldn't fall for a simple trap like that." "She's right, Naruto," Sasuke said from behind them. Ino turned to thank Sasuke for agreeing with her, but she never got the words out as Sasuke had continued. "We're going to need more than an eraser. Let's see what else we have to work with." Ino fell flat on her face. The 2 boys were about to start scouring the area for anything they could use to add to the trap, when the door suddenly started to open. The 3 who were awake looked just in time to see the eraser fall on a head of silver hair. "Holy shit, it worked," Ino said out loud. The man in the doorway was wearing the standard Junin vest and shinobi clothing. He wore a mask that covered the bottom half of his face, and his Hade 8 was pulled down over his left eye. He also still had the eraser on top of his head. "Well, how should I put this?" the man said as he looked them over. "I guess it would be, I hate you." All 3 of them sweat dropped at the comment. "I want the 4 of you." He glanced at Jaga on the roof in 5 minutes. With that he disappeared. Naruto looked at Jaga and then at Sasuke. "It's your turn to wake him up," Naruto said matter-of-factly. The 4 of them stood watching their new masked sensei sitting on the rail of the roof reading some little orange book and giggling. They stood there for a good minute before Sasuke finally got the silver-haired Junin's attention by loudly clearing his throat. "Well, now that you are all here, why don't we get to know each other? Let's hear your likes, dislikes, dreams, hobbies, you know, that sort of thing," the Junin said, putting his book away and acting completely unconcerned that he had made them wait yet again. "Why don't you go first, sensei? We all pretty much know each other, but none of us know anything about you," Ino said. "Okay then. My name is Hitaki Kakashi, and that's about all I plan on telling you." Ino, Sasuke, and Naruto sweat dropped. Jaga just yawned. All we got was his name. They all thought at the same time. "Well, why don't you go first, Blow?" Kakashi was about to say Blondie, when he realized there were three of them, just with varying degrees of blonde. You. He finished pointing at Ino. My name is Yamanaka Ino. My likes are working in my family's flower shop, shopping, and showing Sakura I am better than her at everything. My dislikes are people who think a flower shop girl can't be a ninja, annoying customers, and the very thought of Sakura doing better than me at anything. My hobbies are flower arranging and pissing off Sakura. My dream is to be a great kunoichi and one day take over the family shop. You just got to love those rivalry things, don't you? Kakashi thought. Alright, it's your turn, he said and nodded to Naruto. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, my brother, ramen, my best friend Sasuke, ramen, gardening, and ramen. I don't like the 3-minute wait for my ramen to heat up, and when my brother kicks the crap out of me for being too noisy. My hobbies are training and gardening. My dream is to be the Hokage and to make all the villagers acknowledge my existence. Well, he has certainly developed in an interesting way. Okay, it's your turn. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. My likes are my friends Jaga and Naruto, training, and sometimes pulling pranks with Naruto. I don't like people who judge someone without even knowing them, or people who pity me. My hobbies are training and reading. My dream is to restore my clan and get strong enough to protect those I care about from a certain man. I also wouldn't mind killing that certain man. Sasuke looked at Jaga for some reason after he finished. Jaga just shrugged. It looks like Naruto and Jaga have had a positive effect on him, even if he does still want to kill Itachi. At least he's not obsessed. And finally Mr. Walking Shadow over there. By the way, I like your 88. Jaga gave Kakashi a quick grin before answering. My name is Jaga, just Jaga. My likes would be my brother Naruto, my friend Sasuke, training, and Chinese food. My dislikes I would rather not get into. My hobbies are training, reading, and keeping Naruto in line. I have a few dreams, but the only one I will say is that I want to regain my lost memories. I wonder if he will be like I was warned. I guess I'll find out later. Kakashi mused as he remembered all the warnings he got about Jaga. Well, I guess that about does it for the introductions. So are there any questions you have before I let you go? Only the obvious one, Sasuke said. Why were we all put together on the same team? Shikamaru was right when he said that our team seemed pretty stacked. I figured that would be the question. Well, the answer is sitting right next to you. He pointed at Jaga as if to emphasize. How the hell am I the answer? Sasuke may be the top rookie of the year, but that is only because he is skilled in all aspects of the academy training. You, however, and I am sure Sasuke will agree, beat him hands down when it comes to taijutsu and kenjutsu. Even though your skills with ninjutsu are average and your genjutsu is subpar. Your skills in those first two areas are exceptional for a genin, and you are obviously a frontline fighter. The problem is that if you were put on a team with standard genin and ended up in a fight, they would not be able to support you properly. They just wouldn't be able to keep up, and it would most likely get you all killed. To compensate for that, you were placed with the two overall best rookies of this year. Sasuke and Ino, they are the only ones who will be skilled enough to give you the proper support you would need and be able to fight with you. Okay, I guess that makes sense. Jaga does destroy me when we use straight taijutsu and I can't back it up with ninjutsu, but nowhere in there did you say why Naruto is on the team as well. Sasuke asked after Kakashi finished explaining. Looks like it's time to test some of that info on Jaga. Kakashi mused. Well, since Naruto graduated late, he had not been put on a team before they were all formed. Since we didn't want to mess up any balance that we had managed to get, it was decided to just put him on the same team as his brother. Kakashi answered casually. Out of the corner of his eye he saw Jaga look at him, and was sure Jaga's eyes had narrowed on him. Well, that proves that. I will have to start choosing my words more carefully from now on. Naruto was muttering under his breath when Kakashi focused on all of them again. He couldn't hear what Naruto was saying, but he had a pretty good idea. The boy was not pleased about being called a tag-on. Since that seems to be it for the questions, let's call it a day, shall we? Meet me at Training Ground 7 tomorrow at 5 a.m. Kakashi turned his back on them and pulled out his book as he got ready to leave and then stopped suddenly. Oh yeah, don't eat breakfast before you come, he said, turning his head to face them. Why? Ino asked. Because you'll throw up. Kakashi watched the reactions of the four genin. Ino, Sasuke and Naruto had reacted in fear just as expected, but Jaga just raised an eyebrow at him. That is definitely one hell of an ability. It's almost frightening. He'll probably even ruin my test, he thought as he disappeared in a puff of smoke. About 4:45 a.m. the next morning, a very tired Ino was arriving at Training Area 7. She realized that she was the only one there already and sleepily sat down, leaning against a nearby tree. Just as she was about to doze off, she heard the sound of people coming. Forcing her heavy eyelids open, she watched Naruto and Sasuke came walking up to her. Ino couldn't help but smile as the pair got closer. Naruto was walking with his eyes closed, while firmly holding on to the back of Sasuke's shirt and letting him guide them to their destination. She also noticed that not only did Sasuke not seem to mind, he also appeared to be guiding them around any bumps or holes that might trip Naruto up. Ino found the sight to be adorable. So where is Jaga? Ino asked as she watched Sasuke gently help Naruto lay down in the grass. Ino had to resist the urge to say, "Ah," as she watched. Said he had to get something and left a while before we did. He said he would meet us here. The black-haired boy responded quietly. Ino watched as Sasuke seemed to make sure Naruto was comfortable. She couldn't resist, it was just so cute. Apparently though, Sasuke noticed her watching because he looked at her with slightly hard eyes. "What?" he asked in a rather defensive voice. "I was just thinking about you and Naruto," Ino said honestly. "There was once a time that you didn't want anything to do with anyone, especially him. Now here you are, acting for all the world like a protective brother. I just think it's incredible how people can change." Sasuke's look softened considerably. He then looked at Naruto's sleeping form again, and a gentle smile came to his face. "I don't think it is so much how people change, as it is how Naruto can change people. I hate to think of what I would be like now if it were not for him. Jaga may have been the first to approach me, but it was Naruto who saved me." Ino was just about to ask him what he meant by that last part, when they both heard the sound of footsteps coming through the forest. Looking in the direction of the noise, they were rewarded with the sight of Jaga coming out of the woods holding several shopping bags. "Sorry it took so long for me to get here. It took forever to find a store that was actually open." Jaga then sat on the ground next to them and began to remove his purchase from the bags, which turned out to be store-bought breakfasts and some bowls of pre-warmed ramen. "Well, dig in," Jaga said as he popped the lid off of one of the ramen bowls. "What are you talking about? We were told not to eat or we would throw up." Ino almost shouted at Jaga, who even in the dark was still wearing his sunglasses. "Don't worry about it. It's true that he didn't want us to eat, but it wasn't because he was afraid we would throw up," Jaga said as he began wafting the smell of ramen under Naruto's nose. Naruto was awake instantly and grabbed the bowl from his brother's hand. "Then why doesn't he want us to eat?" "I don't know the real reason, I just know that it wasn't because of his throwing up. Besides, if he is anything like yesterday, we still have almost 2 hours to digest before he even shows up," Jaga said, this time grabbing a store breakfast for himself. "Trust him on this, Ino. His hunches are usually right on the money," Sasuke said as he opened his own breakfast. Naruto was too busy slurping down noodles to say anything, so he just nodded. "You're late," both Ino and Naruto shouted together when Kakashi finally arrived. Sorry, you see this black cat tried to cross my path so I had to take a detour around." "Liar," they both screamed again, while Jaga and Sasuke just shook their heads. Why don't we get started then, seeing as we have everyone here now? The purpose of the test is this." Kakashi then held up 3 bells. "What are those for?" Ino asked. "Your objective is to take these bells from me. If you can get a bell before the time limit runs out, you pass. But there are only 3 bells and 4 of us," Naruto said with a slightly confused look. "Yep, that means one of you won't be getting a bell, doesn't it? If you don't get a bell, does that mean you fail?" Sasuke asked. Kakashi just smiled, closing his visible eye, making sure not to give an actual response. "What happens if we fail?" Naruto asked in a worried voice. "You will be sent back to the academy." All 4 teens were speechless at this news. "On top of that, if you don't manage to get a bell, I will tie you to those posts over there and make you watch as I eat lunch in front of you," Kakashi said, waiting to see their reaction. "So that's why you didn't want us to eat?" Ino said in understanding. "I told you it was a good idea to trust Jagae's hunch on that." I bet you're glad you listened, Sasuke said with a smirk. Could someone tell me what is going on? Kakashi said in a slightly confused voice, though he was pretty sure he had an idea what happened. I brought some breakfast for everyone this morning, so we all already ate. Jaga said. So now that that is no longer an issue, I guess we can focus on getting the bells. Sasuke smirked. Cheaters, I knew Jaga would ruin my test. Kakashi thought sullenly. Well, I guess now we find out if you go back to the academy or not. You have until the alarm goes off. He saw all four get into ready stances. And, start. Ino was just about to jump into the trees when she noticed that her three teammates had made attempt to move from their spots. She quickly stopped her jump to find out what was going on. So what do you think? Sasuke asked and looked at Jaga. I'd say alone we don't stand a chance. If we want to get those bells, all of us are going to have to work together. But there are only 3 of them. Ino said in worry, even if we do get them, how are we supposed to decide who goes and who stays? That's easy, I'll go. The other 3 looked at him in surprise. Hey, don't count me out just yet though. I may have an idea that will let us all pass, but like I said, it will take all of us to pull it off. You guys in? Of course, Naruto said. While the Sasuke and Ino nodded their heads. There is something that I think you should know, but I'll tell you after we hear the plan. Naruto added. Alright then, here's what we do. Jaga said, and began outlining his idea. Kakashi watched with mild curiosity as the 4 young genin whispered together in a huddle. Well, it seems they are going to pass the teamwork part easily enough. I wonder how effective it will be though. Kakashi did not have to wait much longer to find out though, because at that time the 4 genin broke from their huddle and got into ready stances. Everyone knows what to do? Jaga asked his teammates. Roger, the other 3 said in unison. Let's do this, Naruto yelled. At that moment both he and Jaga charged straight at Kakashi while Sasuke and Ino disappeared into the trees. 2 to attack directly and 2 to provide support, not a bad idea. Kakashi though, impressed that they had worked out a sound strategy. Jaga was the first to attack. Kakashi had heard all about how good he was with a sword for a genin, but he was still surprised to see just how fast Jaga could draw it from his back. Kakashi barely dodged to the left before the sword slashed vertically down where he had just been standing. Before Kakashi could try to counter-attack, he was forced to dodge the shuriken that Naruto had thrown as cover. Jaga quickly spun towards Kakashi and sent an upward diagonal slash to Kakashi's torso. Kakashi once again moved over to dodge the attack but was almost caught by the kick that had been thrown directly after it. Kakashi caught the kick with his left arm and went to strike Jaga, when he realized the sword had moved to Jaga's left hand as was coming in high from a backhand swing. Kakashi pulled out a kunai just in time to block the sword that had been coming at his neck. He saw an opening for a strike to Jaga's stomach but didn't get a chance to take it because of the several kunai that had just been launched at him from the trees. He jumped back away from Jaga and the kunai only to have to block a kick to his stomach by Naruto. Kakashi delivered a strong blow to Naruto's head, but as soon as he struck, Naruto disappeared with a pop and a puff of smoke. Kage Bunshin, I forgot I was told he could use that. Kakashi's thoughts were cut short when he realized there was a rain of kunai and shuriken coming at him from all directions. Using a quick kawarimi, Kakashi escaped the rain of weapons and hid in a tree. Using the bit of a timeout he had made for himself, he analyzed the way the 4 were attacking him. They're much better than I thought they would be. The way they cover each other is almost perfect. The 2 doing the frontal assault watch each other's backs and also count on the support of their 2 hidden comrades. Jaga is just as good as I have been told, but the way he was fighting seemed a little off. I'll look into that later. At first I thought Jaga would be my main concern in the frontal assault, but Naruto knowing how to use Kage Bunshin is actually making him the more worrisome one. Kakashi looked out at Naruto and Jaga, who were watching their surroundings carefully and waiting for him to reappear. Kakashi suddenly had an idea. If I take Jaga as a hostage, Naruto will stop fighting. Then I can knock them both out for a while and focus on Sasuke and Ino. Kakashi crouched down on the branch preparing to put his plan in motion. It worked perfectly. Jumping from the tree, Kakashi sprinted straight past Naruto and headed for Jaga. Jaga tried to bring up his sword to stop him, but surprise was on Kakashi's side. He ducked the sword and quickly got behind Jaga, putting a kunai to his throat. That however is when it fell apart on him. Now Sasuke. Jaga yelled suddenly. Kakashi heard the rustle of leaves and looked behind him to see Sasuke jumping out of the trees and forming seals. No way, he shouldn't have enough Shikara for that technique. Not to mention I still have. It was about then that the Jaga he was holding turned into Naruto and then popped out of existence. Kage Bunshin and Henge, when did they? He didn't have time to think about it anymore. Kaden. Gukaku no Jutsu. Sasuke yelled as he launched a huge fireball. The fire hit exactly where Kakashi was standing, leaving a good-sized crater in the ground. Kakashi took his chance to try to take Sasuke out of action. He reached up from the ground he had retreated to and grabbed Sasuke's leg. Doden. Shinjuzanshu no Jutsu, he called out as he pulled Sasuke up to his neck into the ground. Coming out of the ground, Kakashi looked down at Sasuke's face. Well, that's one down, or so he thought. A pop and a puff of smoke later, Kakashi could only think one thing. You gotta be fucking kidding me, they got me with that twice. Suddenly the bushes that were around him turned into 4 Narutos, 2 of which quickly grabbed his legs and the other 2 his arms. Do it, the 4 Narutos shouted at once. Kakashi then saw Ino, Sasuke, Jaga and the real Naruto spring from the remaining bushes and come at him from all sides. No one attacked him though, they just passed him, forming a sort of box around his body before they all continued dashing by. Well, albeit looks like they got me. Kakashi had figured out that the 4 of them moving like that had not been to land a blow, it was only to make sure that if he managed to move in any direction someone would have a chance to grab the bells. And it had worked flawlessly. The clones holding Kakashi disappeared in a puff of smoke, allowing him to turn and look at his team. For some reason Jaga was on the other side of him, away from the 3 who stood holding the bells. He knew that they had won, but he wanted to test one more thing. Well, now that you all managed to get the bells, how are you going to decide who gets to stay and who will go? Let's see who is willing to sacrifice themselves. Well, you see, Kakashi-sensei. We decided that if getting the bells from you was enough to pass, then getting something else from you should be too. Naruto said with a huge grin on his face. Kakashi did not like the sound of that. What else could you have? He suddenly gasped and reached into his weapons case, searching for his most treasured possession. He almost cried when he realized it wasn't there. Where is it? He said in a dangerous voice. The 3 in front of him gulped and pointed behind him. Turning to look at the now about to die Jaga, he was stopped dead in his tracks at the sight before him. There was Jaga, flipping casually through the pages of his Icha Paradise. Suddenly Jaga stopped, his eyebrows rising high over his sunglasses. Then slowly he turned the book sideways and tilted his head with it, his mouth forming an "oohh" as he examined the page. After recovering from seeing his precious book being so casually looked over by the teen, Kakashi spoke. Would you mind giving that back to me? It was definitely not a question. Will you pass us all if I do? Jaga said in a calm tone, completely unfazed by the killing aura that was coming off Kakashi. Why should I do that? To be honest, I wouldn't care in the least if you didn't pass me. The problem stems from the fact that it wouldn't be just me that wouldn't pass. What do you mean? Kakashi asked, the unexpected response serving to calm him down considerably. Ask them, Jaga said as he pointed to his teammates. Kakashi turned to the remaining 3 and raised his eyebrow questioningly. Jaga said he didn't mind if he was the one who failed. Ino said, so when he told us his plan, we all decided something, and not even he can change our minds on this. Sasuke said, we decided that if his taking your book was not enough to pass, then we would give you back the bells and fail with him. Naruto said within a strong voice. Kakashi was shocked when he heard the proud declaration, but he did manage to get out the question that would make his final decision for him. Why would you quit just because one of your friends couldn't make it with you? Don't you think that they would prefer that you succeed even if they didn't? What if it was a mission and the only way to successfully complete it was to leave a comrade behind? If completing the mission meant I had to sacrifice a member of my team, then the mission can go to hell for all I care. My teammates are way more important and I will not leave them behind. Naruto said with all the conviction he had. Beside him both Sasuke and Ino nodded in agreement, their faces serious. Kakashi looked the 3 of them over, then he looked back at Jaga who gave him a slight nod. Kakashi was feeling rather proud of his 4 new students as he started walking towards a black rock that stood in the grounds that they were training in. A very wise person once told me, "Those who don't follow the rules are considered trash, but those who don't care about their friends are worse than trash." You all truly understand that, don't you? Kakashi looked over at them and his eye closed from his warm smile. You all pass. As of tomorrow we begin doing missions as Team 7. As Sasuke, Ino, and most especially Naruto began cheering, Jaga walked up to Kakashi and handed him his book. Before Jaga could leave, Kakashi asked him the question that had been begging to be asked. How much were you holding back in this? What makes you think I was holding back, sensei? The way you were fighting just seemed a little off. As if you were forcing yourself to do something. Or maybe not do something. I was coming at you with all the speed and strength I had, on that I can guarantee you. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go celebrate with my team. Jaga walked away quickly in order to catch up to his teammates, leaving Kakashi to stare after them. The new genins of Team 7 left the training grounds together. Naruto of course screaming about getting ramen, which got him a punch to the head from both Jaga and Ino. So what do you think of them? A voice came from behind Kakashi. Kakashi turned to see the Anbu who had just asked him the question. The man was wearing an eagle mask. They make a great team. I have a feeling they will go far. What do you think of him? He is better than your average genin, that's true, but if he was really giving it his all as far as speed and power goes, I wasn't as impressed as I thought I'd be. I'm not sure why you all act so nervous about him. There wasn't even a shred of that intense killing intent you told me about either. It's because that isn't how he usually fights. He was holding back because the other 3 were there. He also didn't actually want to kill you, so of course he wouldn't give off killing intent. There's also the fact that if he had, the other 3 would have been immobilized by it. I thought the sword coming at my neck was proof that he was indeed trying to kill me. Besides, he told me himself that he wasn't holding back, and the Hokage, hell, even you told me that Jaga has never lied once since he came here. It's true, Jaga will not lie to anyone, but that doesn't mean he can't use partial truth to give you the wrong idea. So as far as his speed and power goes, you're right, he wasn't holding back in the least. That won't change if he goes all out, but how he fights will. As for the sword going to your neck, there is a big difference between actually trying to kill someone, and just not caring if you do. I guess that makes sense. Still though, if his overall strength stays the same, how will he be any more dangerous? Kakashi said. You'll see, Kakashi, you'll see. Then even you might start to sweat. Ino sat behind the counter of her family's flower shop, drumming her fingers and looking out the window. There had not single customer all day, and needless to say she was getting really bored. My first day off in 2 weeks, and my mother just has to have me watch the store while she goes shopping. Thanks a lot, Mom. I hope you feel bad when I die of boredom. Ino let out a sigh and started to let her mind wander. Eventually her thoughts came around to her team, or to be more specific, to the boys on her team. First up came her first and overall current crush, Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke was so much different from how he used to be, it was amazing. She could remember the time all he did was respond in grunts and 1 to 2 word answers to any question asked him. He didn't try to get to know anybody or let anybody know him. Just an overall cool and lone wolf type guy. Now he laughed and smiled, joked and pulled pranks. He talked to people who addressed him, and even started conversations with some of the clients. Sometimes Ino wondered if someone had not mastered a personality reversing jutsu and used it on him. Those thoughts of course brought her back to the morning of the test 2 weeks ago. She could still see the softness in his eyes and the care and concern he had been showing Naruto. Then the last part of his words would echo through her head again. It was Naruto who saved me. What could he mean by that? She wasn't quite sure. She had been meaning to ask him about it since then, but she always seemed to get sidetracked. Maybe she should try asking Naruto about it. He would probably know. That of course turned her thoughts over to the prior mentioned boy. Naruto was, well, he was Naruto. He tended to be too loud and sometimes obnoxious, though that had gone down considerably since Jaga came on the scene. He was obsessed with ramen and training, and tended to not think things through before he said or did them. But he was also so kind and caring and overall so innocent and loving that it seemed to make all his faults seem small in comparison. He went out of his way to help people, and he absolutely could not stand to see a girl or child cry. Then of course there were his beautiful deep blue eyes that she could get lost in for hours. His bright blonde hair that could make the sun jealous with its golden shine. Those strange, whisker-like, birthmarks on his face that practically begged her fingers to trace them along his face. His bright, beautiful smile that always seemed to make her feel good no matter how down she was feeling. The cute way he would scratch the back of his head was just so, I'm doing it again. Ino shook her head quickly, trying to clear away those kinds of thoughts about Naruto. She had convinced herself a while ago that she only thought of Naruto as a friend. A kind, caring friend that she only really knew because he had gotten into gardening and started coming to her family shop, that's all. She still had a crush on Sasuke after all, even if she was half sure that she only kept it up to piss off Sakura. But sometimes she wondered if that was all she felt. Naruto was just so sweet and caring that it was hard not to like him. So why do the villagers look at him like that? No matter how nice the thoughts she may be having about Naruto were at any given time, that question always seemed to find its way into Ino's mind. It took her about a week to notice, but notice she had. Whenever they would be walking together down crowded streets, she would catch glares and spite-filled looks that would be directed at Naruto. Ino couldn't understand what he may have done to get those kinds of looks. Yes, he used to pull a lot of pranks, but that was no reason to hate someone. Hell, even Sasuke had started to join in the pranks after he had befriended Naruto, but the glares only ever went to Naruto. Ino just couldn't understand it. Forcing her thoughts away from Naruto and the glares he received brought her to the last boy on her team, Jaga. Jaga was a walking enigma in himself. Coming from a family who used mind jutsus, Ino had learned a great deal on the human psychology and behavior patterns, but Jaga was still throwing her for loops. At first glance you would see an open, friendly boy who enjoys spending time with his brother and friends. In fact, Ino was sure if it weren't for her training in observing people she would see just that as well. But she was trained, so she saw more. Despite his open and friendly attitude, Jaga seemed to emit a kind of aura that said it was a good idea to stay away from him. It wasn't clearly visible, like being rude or introverted or telling people to back off. It was small things he did that brought it to light for Ino. The first thing she noticed was that Jaga did all he could to keep people from getting behind him. If someone did manage to get that there, she could see his hands move closer to either his sword or his shuriken pouch. To the casual observer it would seem he was just scratching his neck or side, but Ino remembered what had happened on the Jagae's first day of class when that boy had touched Jagae's back. Ino knew it was not a coincidence that his hands moved to his weapons, but she didn't know why. He was also alert. It was as if he was always aware of what was going on around him at any given time. He didn't look around a lot or anything like that, he just always seemed to know. As to his past, Ino knew exactly what everyone else knew. Jaga had no memories of his life past 7 or so years ago, and he had only been in Konoha for around 4. It was those 3 or so years before he came to Konoha that no one knew about. If you were to ask Jaga, his usual response was to either skillfully change the subject or just plainly state that he would rather not talk about it. Ino had decided to ask her father about it one day, making sure not to tell him just who she was observing acting that way. His response shocked her to say the least. Flashback. Hey daddy, can you help me with something? Ino called out as she walked into her house. Sure princess, what do you need help with? Well, there's this guy the first no and he seems really nice. But the way he acts is kind of strange and I can't figure out what it could be. What do you mean? What does he do that's so strange? Well, for one he never lets anyone get behind him if he can help it, and when someone does he tends to reach for his weapons. He also always seems to be on alert. He just seems to know what's happening around him at all times, like he expects to be attacked or something. And if you ask him anything about his past he'll either find a way to change the subject or just not answer at all. I just can't figure it out. It sounds like this guy was most likely a frontline fighter during the Great Shinobi War. If he acts like that I would say he was probably involved in high-risk missions that carried a constant threat of death. Anbu special ops maybe. I'm surprised you met a guy like that. Most of them couldn't handle city life anymore and had to move into the forest area. But that's impossible. Ino almost screamed. Then realizing her outburst she tried to cover it. I mean, he isn't that old so I don't think that could be it. Well then I don't have any answers that could explain it. Your description of the guy sounds like a war veteran, so I don't know what else it could be. Maybe if you tell me his name I can try to look up his file or something. No, no, that's okay, Daddy. Ino was still a bit shocked that one of her teammates was acting like a hardened war veteran, but she didn't want to pry into his life when he obviously didn't want people to. It's not really important, I was just curious. But inside her mind the questions just kept coming, and with them there was one that was the loudest. Jaga, just who are you, and what kind of life have you had? Flashback end. The news at first had made Ino almost afraid of her older teammate, but as the time passed, so did her anxiety. Jaga may have the symptoms of a war veteran, but he was also a great person. The way he treated her was exactly like he treated Naruto. He acted like he was her older brother. Yesterday she even accidentally called him Ni-san just like Naruto did, but considering the circumstances she felt it was justified. Flashback. The four of them were walking with each other on their way home after finishing their missions for the day, and were chatting happily about how they were good enough to do 2 to 3 missions a day, when most teams only did 1. As they were nearing the path that would force them to take different routes, a group of about 6 boys around the same age as them came walking by. Hey baby, why don't you come have a good time with us? One of them called to Ino. Oh yeah, you definitely look like the type who knows how to give a guy some fun. Another said as he leered at her. I think we. That was as far as it got before a fist to his face shut him up. Jaga was on the boys faster than they could react, not that it would have done much good. Jaga was merciless. After punching the one who was about to say something, he grabbed him by his head and slammed him face first into the ground. Grabbing whoever was closest, Jaga kicked him in the back of the legs, sending the boy to his knees, and then slammed his elbow into the top of his head, knocking the kid out cold. The other 4 recovered enough by then to try to counter-attack by rushing Jaga from all sides. Jumping up, Jaga used one of them as leverage to slam his foot into another one's face, sending him backwards with enough force to put a hole in the fence he hit. At the same time, Jaga threw the boy's head he was gripping forward, causing him to smash his forehead into the forehead of the boy coming at him from the other direction. Both boys fell down unconscious with blood flowing down their face. The last boy, seeing how quickly his friends had been taken out, turned to run in order to save himself. Before he could get 10 feet there was a shuriken embedded into the back of his left thigh, causing him to fall to the ground. Jaga calmly walked over and grabbed him by the collar and proceeded to drag the whimpering boy over to where the others stood. Ino noticed that it was the same boy who had basically said she looked like a slut. Well, as it stands, your buddies over there will most likely recover without too much damage, you on the other hand may not. You made a very rude comment to my teammate and she may have taken offense. So I'm gonna let her decide your fate. Jaga then looked up at Ino. It's up to you, say the word and I'll put him in the hospital if you want. Ino was looking at the boy on his knees, who had already wet himself by the way, and weighing her options. In the end she decided to take pity on the boy, believing that he probably learned his lesson. Besides, that shuriken had to hurt like hell. Just let him go, Jaga, I don't think he'll be making that mistake again. Ino said in a stern voice. Jaga just shrugged and did as she asked. Of course his idea of, let him go, involved throwing him another 10 feet down the road and head first into a post. I guess that will teach him to watch his mouth when there's someone with big brother instincts around. Sasuke said with smirk. No kidding, the guy was lucky Ni-san let Ino decide or he may have never walked again. Naruto said with a shudder. Okay, so Ino had just heard them talking about brothers and Naruto call him Ni-san. Of course she would slip up, right? Walking over to where Jaga was standing she thanked him. Thank you for defending me, Ni-san, she said without even realizing what she called him. Jaga looked slightly stunned for a moment, much to Ino's confusion, then got a warm smile on his face and put his hand on top of her head as he responded. My pleasure, Imouto. Flashback end. Dang. The sound of the front door opening brought Ino sharply back to reality. Recovering quickly, she put her best business smile on and looked to where the customer was. How can I help you? See? Naruto, what are you doing here? I thought you were going to train with Sasuke. Naruto was standing in the entrance, scratching the back of his head apologetically. He was still wearing his normal pants, sandals and 88, but today he also was wearing a white t-shirt with a red Konoha leaf on the front, instead of his usual dark blue hoodie. Ino thought it was a good look and was starting to go off on the same kind of thoughts she was having about him earlier when he answered. Well, Sasuke said since we were getting the day off that he wanted the day off. So he went back to his house to relax and read one of his new books. I decided to go ahead and take it easy as well, so I came by to see about getting some new seeds to plant. So Sasuke went home to read and you came here. Where did Jaga go? Ino said. Naruto suddenly got a mischievous smile on his face. Well, we got the day off because Ni-san had to pick up his sword today, remember? Naruto's eyes were sparkling with mirth. Ino did not miss how Naruto had emphasized Ni-san and almost fell over. Tch, that was just a slip, okay. I mean, he did defend my honor and act all big brother like. And then with what you and Sasuke were saying afterwards, it wasn't my fault that I. That was as far as her rambling got before Naruto held up his hand to stop her, with a huge smile on his face. Don't worry about it, Ino, I don't mind sharing my brother. Besides, I heard his response, so I know he doesn't mind either. Ino looked like she was about to protest again, so Naruto continued. Look, Ino, Sasuke was right when he said Ni-san has big brother instincts. I'm sure you already noticed that's how he tends to treat us all, right? Even Sasuke has almost called him Ni-san a couple times. Naruto paused before he finished. Oh yeah, and now that he has called you Imouto once already, he'll probably keep doing it, so you may as well get used to it. Naruto's smile came back in full force when he saw Ino blush a little at the last part. That does raise an interesting question though. Naruto said, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. If you two start acting like siblings, does that mean that we have to start acting like siblings? Ino laughed and told him that they would just keep it at friends, to which he quickly agreed was a good idea. In the back of her mind, Ino was not pleased at the question. Naruto better not start thinking of me like a sister or I may have to hurt him. Kyogu, are you finished with my sword yet? I felt naked for the last 3 days. Jaga called out as he walked into the weapons shop. Oh Jaga, you're right on time, I actually finished about an hour ago. Kyogu had insisted that he and Jaga be on first-name basis when the teen had dropped off his sword 3 days ago. It was his way of showing Jaga that he didn't care who he was and that he would treat him with respect. How is an hour after right on time? Because I said smart ass. Yes, they had also found that they were both natural banterers. Now get over here and pay me, or you're not getting it back. So I take it you found out what the medal was that you couldn't place the first time I came here. Jaga stated as he pulled out his money. Unfortunately, no, I didn't. I put the shavings through every test I have, but nothing came back. I am sending some that I have left to a friend of mine in the wave who has some more advanced tests he could run on it. As Kyogu explained his lack of results, he had gone to the back and retrieved Jagae's straight blade katana. He handed it to the boy, who took it with obvious relief, crossing his face. You seem happy to have that back. It was the first time in at least 7 years that it's been any more than arm's length away from me. So yeah, I was feeling a little edgy without it, Jaga defensively. Well, do you want to take it to the training area I have out back and give that new edge it has a test run? Why not, it's not like I need to be anywhere. The first thing Jaga noticed was that the training area behind Kyogu's shop was covered in targets. The next thing he noticed was that every one of those targets had a mass amount of kunai, shuriken, and even senbon needles sticking out of them. The last thing he noticed was a girl with a pink Chinese top, dark green short pants and the strangest hairstyle he'd ever seen. Oh sorry, I didn't know you were practicing cupcake. Kyogu said apologetically. Jaga looked over at him with an eyebrow raised. Cupcake? I'll call my daughter whatever I want, so you just keep the comments to yourself. He turned back to the girl in pink. So I take it you don't have any missions today. The girl looked back at her father to answer. She was cute, that was sure, and he liked her brown eyes, but Jaga was positive she would look much better with her hair down, and not in that mouse style she had going. No, guys, sensei gave us the day off, something about taking time to keep our youthful spirits high. The girl finished. Well, is it okay if I interrupt your training for a little bit? I have a customer here who wants to try out the new edge on his sword. Kyogu said and nodded to Jaga. The girl walked over to where Kyogu and Jaga were standing. She stopped about 5 feet in front of Jaga and looked at him as if trying to size him up. Never seen you before, she finally said. I guess that makes us even then. Is there a reason that you are wearing so much black? Is there a reason your hair looks like mouse ears? The girl bristled noticeably. I like it like this. Well, I like wearing black. Kyogu decided to step in before things got out of hand. Jaga, this is my daughter Tenten. Tenten, this is Jaga. Anyway Jaga, let's get to testing that edge of yours, shall we? I have an idea, Tenten suddenly said. Why don't you and I have a little spar? That way you can test your blade, and I can get in some training. Jaga didn't even need his talent to see that her intentions were not that pure. Maybe it was the way she fingering the kunai she had while staring at him hard. Must have been the mouse ears comment, Jaga thought while giving her an impudent smile. Why not, I could use the workout. With that said, he put his hand on the hilt of his blade. Kyogo had started backing up right about then. Tenten took out one of her summoning scrolls and bit her thumb. Dragging the blood across the paper, she brought out a regular katana. To make it fair, I'll use a sword as well. Do you have any problems with that? Well, that's not really gonna be very fair, but if that's how you want it, I'll try to take it easy on you. Jaga said very calmly. Tenten did not take that well at all. Without a second thought, she charged. She tried a horizontal slash about shoulder high to his left side, just to have his sword block it. Dropping down, she twisted her body and switched the sword to her right hand, tried to go for his legs from the right side, just to have his blade block hers once again. Jumping back, she readied herself for her next try. This time she zigzagged from left to right, then acted like she was going for a downward slash to his shoulder. But at the last second she pulled back and ducked past his side to get behind him. Turning quickly, she sent a straight thrust for the middle of his back. At the last second, Jaga simply turned his body and let the blade pass his body within less than an inch. Before she could even react to his dodge, she realized she had a sword pressed against her neck. Tenten had lost and she knew it. Letting her sword fall from her grasp, she waited for him to start gloating. You're very good, but you advertise your movements a little too much, that's why I was able to get you so fast. Try to avoid that and you'll be set. Oh, and don't take it too hard. My sword and shuriken are the only weapons I use, so I practice with them all the time. Next time, how about you not limit yourself and fight how you are most comfortable, just like I did? Tenten would have turned to look at him incredulously, but his sword was still at her neck. Being complimented, critiqued, and reassured was not the reaction she was expecting. She suddenly felt her hair come out of their buns and fall down her back. Jaga walked around Tenten to look at her face again. He couldn't help but be affected by the difference letting her hair down had made. The way it brought out the chocolate brown in her eyes captivated him. It fell about midway down her back and had a look of softness about it that was almost demanding he run his fingers through it. He had thought she was cute before, but now she was beautiful. Pulling his sword away from her neck and putting it away, Jaga gave her an appreciative smile, which actually made the girl blush. Quick to a fight, knows her way around a blade and is beautiful to boot, definitely my kind of girl. Jaga said, giving her a mischievous smile, causing the girl to go even redder. You should let your hair down more often. I mean, you're cute with it up the way you had it. But you're damn right beautiful with it down. With that, Jaga started walking to the door so he could leave through the shop. Thanks for the sharpening job, Kyogo. I'll be sure to stop by next time I need some new weapons or work done on my sword. Jaga said as he walked by the man. Without a backward glance, he walked through the door. Kyogo watched Jaga leave, then turned to look at his daughter. Tenten, who was still blushing, was staring at the door Jaga had just walked through with a look of confusion, anger, but most of all, wonder. Her hair was still falling loosely down her back and gently moving in the breeze. Seeing the look on her face, Kyogo's father instincts kicked in full force. Oh no, not my baby girl. Well, that was sweet. Is our little Jaga finally becoming interested in girls? Shut it, Barky, I don't want to hear it from you either, Mutt. Jaga said to the two black-haired men walking beside him. Jaga hadn't managed to get more than 50 feet outside the door of Kyogo's shop before the last two Anbu from the four-man team that watched him made their appearance in a henge. Normally both of them wore dog masks, hence Mutt and Barky. Oh come on, you said yourself she was your type of girl, which also means that you were being completely honest about it. You can't blame us for being a little happy to see you take an interest. Mutt said. Yeah, I mean, you always run from your fangirls, so we were starting to worry. Barky kept up his banter with a huge smile. I said shut up, don't you have anything better to do than follow me around? Jagae's irritation was clearly evident. Both men smiled brightly again. Well, we were told to make sure that you didn't intend to do anything more permanent to those boys who disrespected you, Imouto. Jaga stopped dead in his tracks, turning to look at the two black-haired men who were still grinning hugely. Who saw it? Why Kitten, of course, and I do believe she has already started spreading the information of what happened to the general public. She is rather keen on making you seem less like the killing machine that everybody thinks you are. Barky answered. Mud took over from there. Don't forget about what we just saw. Kitten's going to have a field day with this news. She may even try to arrange a date for the two of you. Jagae's hand began to move up to the hilt of his sword. Sorry Jaga, I'd like to say, just kidding, but I would be lying so you would know anyway. It's our job to report anything you do that involves fighting. Whether a simple spar or a killing spree, we have to report it. Jaga let his hand fall away in defeat. Even if he actually did want to hurt them, it's not like he actually could. He was about to glare at the two men in front of him when it happened again. The two who were currently in a henge to look like two black-haired men, suddenly changed into two men with brown hair, black slit eyes, and red markings on their face. Inuzuka, he said out loud. The weirdest part was that unlike previous times, instead of flashing back to the original thing he saw, the two were sort of overlaid. So he saw both the black-haired men and the Inuzuka men. The two in front of him were looking at him with shock. What did you just say? Barky asked in a low voice. The two of you suddenly looked like you were from the Inuzuka clan. In fact, you still kind of do. Jaga said in confusion. Both men looked at each other with unreadable expressions, then nodded. Turning back to Jaga, Mud gave a quick farewell, and then both men disappeared in a puff of smoke. Jaga stared at the spot they had just been standing in for a minute before walking away in confusion. Well, that was weird, he thought out loud. The way they reacted, you would almost think I. His eyes widened behind his sunglasses as realization hit him. No fucking way. Single quote. X. 1 week later. No way, not happening. Pick something better, Oji-san. Naruto yelled at the Hokage. Kakashi looked at the loudmouth Naruto, pretty much certain he was going to get him in trouble. Naruto, how many times must we go over this? As genin you have to do D-ranked missions in order to build up experience. You can't just jump into the higher ranked missions. The Hokage said yet again to the very impatient Naruto. He's right Naruto, Ino stepped in. We've only been genin for 3 weeks, we can't expect to be handed important missions so soon. I have to agree with Naruto on this. Sasuke said from the side. It may have only been 3 weeks, but we've done more missions than most genin do in months. For one, we have one more person than the average team. Then you throw Naruto's Kage Bunshin on top of that, and we practically fly through them. I suppose you bring up a valid point, but why don't we get the opinion of the last member of your team? The Hokage looked pointedly at Jaga. Jaga seemed to fall into some kind of internal debate for a minute. Finally he sighed and answered. I fail to see how walking dogs, picking up trash, pulling weeds, and chasing down runaway cats is supposed to prepare you for life as a ninja. Jaga said. Well, you have all made good arguments, well except Naruto, who just yelled for something better, but that's not the point. The point is that the points that were made were also good. You all have done quite a number of missions in a short time. Then add the fact that you all graduated fairly high in your class. So I have decided to go ahead and let you do a C-ranked mission. The Hokage pulled out a scroll for them to see. Really, Oji-san, you're the greatest. So what's the mission? Naruto practically screamed. Ino, who had finally had enough, punched him in the back of his head, sending him to the floor. Nice hit, Imouto. Jaga said. Arigato ni-san. Ino smiled back. So when did those two get so close? Kakashi asked Sasuke. Let's just say there are 6 boys who won't be making any rude comments to girls if there's anyone wearing black around. Sasuke said with a smirk. Well, why don't I bring in the client for this mission? The Hokage raised his voice. You can come in now. The door opened to reveal an old man with a rope around his head, who seemed to be a bit drunk, made more evident by the bottle of sake in his hand. What the hell, they're a bunch of kids. Are they even really ninja? The old man took a swig of his sake before he went on. The blonde in blue doesn't look all that bright or reliable either. The old man was more than a little surprised when he suddenly found himself with the tip of both a sword and a kunai touching each side of his neck. Would you care to repeat that? Sasuke said in a menacing tone. He won't be able to, because the second he tries I'll cut out his voice box. The fact that Jaga made his threat in a perfectly calm voice actually scared everyone more than Sasuke's voice had. Seems he's a good judge of people after all, Sasuke said as he removed his kunai. Jaga only grunted as he resheathed his sword. By now Kakashi had put his hand over his eyes, positive he was going to get scolded for his team's actions. Naruto had a slightly surprised look, while Ino wore a satisfied smirk on her face. The Hokage had lowered his head behind his hat as if embarrassed, but if you were to look closely you would be able to see the small smile that had found its way to his lips. Anyway, my name is Tazuna the bridge building expert, and I will have you all protect me with your lives while I build my bridge. The old man said after he had recovered a little. You all heard him, the Hokage said from his desk. You will be leaving in 1 hour, I suggest you all go pack. Hi, Hokage-sama, they all said in unison. As they turned to leave they heard the Hokage call out again. Jaga, could you stay a moment please, I would like to talk to you. Jaga nodded and turned to his teammates telling them he would catch up. Turning around he went and stood in front of the Hokage's desk. What do you need, old man? I would like to know if you are truly ready to leave Konoha again. I saw your hesitancy to add your impute earlier. If you think you should stay I may be able to provide you with a plausible excuse. The Hokage said in a kind tone. Jaga let out a slightly tired breath. Thanks old man, but I can't keep trying to hide from my past behind these walls forever. Yes, taking missions that take me back out into the world beyond Konoha means I will have to face it eventually. But whether it is this mission or the next, my past will catch up to me. The Hokage could see the wisdom in the young man's words, but he could not help but still be a little apprehensive. Just be sure to keep your calm. Remember, I was there that night, so I am fully aware of what happens when you let rage consume you. That happened one time, and I haven't done it since. Give me a break already. With that, Jaga turned around and walked out of the office without a backward glance. The old man looked at the door that Jaga had just exited. The memories of that night slowly flooding back. Leaning back with a heavy sigh he said out loud. Believe me Jaga, once was enough. Yata, let's get going already. Come on, hurry up already. This is my first time being outside of Konoha. I want to get going so I can see more. Come on, let's go. Naruto yelled as he bounced up and down just beyond the main gates. You don't need to get so freaking excited, Dobi. It's not that big a deal. Sasuke said after he had gotten tired of hearing Naruto yelling. Yeah Naruto, calm down a bit. Ino added. Naruto gave them both an impatient look. First off, shut up Teme. And second, don't act like you two aren't at least a little bit excited. Neither of you have been outside of Konoha before either. Maybe we are a little, but that doesn't mean we have to go around shouting like idiots. Ino said in a stern voice. Ah, you two are killjoys. Oh hey ni-san. Naruto called out to Jaga, who had finally caught up to them all. You'll agree with me on this, right? Isn't it exciting to finally get to go outside of Konoha? Jaga tilted his head at the younger blonde for a second as if trying to figure out if he was serious before he asked. Naruto, did you forget that I originally came from outside of Konoha? Naruto gave him a confused look for a minute. Then realization seemed to slowly dawn on him. Putting his hand behind his head he laughed embarrassedly. I guess I did. The other three sweat dropped before shaking their heads. The four of them stood at the gate entrance for another 20 minutes waiting on Tazuna and Kakashi. While three of them stood, Naruto had finally annoyed Ino and Jaga to the point that the double hit they delivered to the back of his head had left him face down on the ground for the last 10 of those minutes. Finally both Kakashi and Tazuna came through the gate to join them. Even though Tazuna kept glancing nervously at Jaga and Sasuke, it seemed he had not quite gotten over the double death threat. Well, now that we're all here, let's get going, Kakashi said in his lazy tone. Naruto made a miraculous recovery at those words and began whooping for joy. He stopped, rather suddenly, when he saw both Ino and Jaga crack their knuckles. Two of them, and judging by the slight haze around them, I'm not supposed to be seeing them. Jaga thought to himself when he spotted the two strange ninjas as wearing scuba gear-like masks and a huge claw-like thing on opposite arms of each other, about 100 meters ahead of his team. Slowing down his walk he dropped back next to Kakashi. Kakashi-sensei, there's two strange ninja about 100 meters in front of us. It looks like they're hiding in a genjutsu, and they don't look all that friendly. He said in a low tone so only the Junin would hear. Kakashi looked ahead and saw the gleam of a puddle on the path right around where Jaga had said he saw the ninja. All right, I know where they are. He turned back to Jaga. I want you to fall back a bit. You are not to get involved. What? Jaga barely caught himself in time not to yell. Why? Because first and foremost, I need to know exactly who their target is and you may kill them before I find out. Second, it will be a good test to see how the others react to a real situation. So I want you far enough back not to let those instincts of yours take over. Understood? Jaga was not happy when he answered. Fine, but if any of them get hurt, I will find a way to kill you. Don't worry, they'll be just fine. The attack was sudden. Naruto, Ino and Sasuke had been walking up front chatting happily when the sounds of chains being thrown around got their attention. They turned around just in time to see their sensei apparently get sliced into little pieces by the chain that had been wrapped around him. That's one, the Toe shinobi said through their masks. Naruto was in a state of shock at seeing his sensei cut to pieces, but he didn't have much time to think about it when he suddenly heard a voice behind him. Number 2. Naruto looked back to see the two ninja coming at him with their chain out and ready to slice him up. He felt his blood run cold, and his body freeze. There was no chance he was going to get away. They're too close, I can't dodge. He told himself frantically. Suddenly Sasuke was there. Throwing a shuriken at the chain, he managed to pin it against a nearby tree. Naruto, recovering because of Sasuke's actions, followed through by throwing a kunai through the hole in the shuriken and locking it into place. The two enemy nin tried to pull out the chain only to find they were completely stuck to the tree. Naruto and Sasuke used the break in their opponent's concentration to each launch simultaneous kicks to the faces of their enemy before jumping off to separate sides. The enemy ninja detached their chain from their clawed gauntlets and both went to attack a different boy. Just as they were about to reach them, they were both forced to jump back as a kunai came flying at each of them. The two nin turned their heads to look where the weapons had come from and saw Ino standing in front of Tazuna. Changing their plan, the two nin headed straight at the pair. With a speed born of desperation, both Naruto and Sasuke managed to place themselves in front of Ino and Tazuna. Sasuke stood firm ready to receive the attack, but Naruto charged straight at the two attacking nin before anyone could stop him. Just as Naruto got close to the pair, there was a slight blur of movement which ended with Kakashi standing right in front of Naruto with the two enemy ninja in his arms and their necks broken. Kakashi-sensei, you're okay. Naruto said as his confusion at the sight of the sensei he thought had died turned to relief. Yo, sorry I took so long to help out. I had to make sure that somebody wouldn't go jumping in before I got the information I needed. Kakashi said and looked to the left where Jaga was walking out from behind a tree. Well, at least you killed them. I was worried that you would just tie them to a tree or something. Jaga said as he came up to the rest of the group. Did you figure out what you needed to know? I did, and on that note, Kakashi turned to look at Tazuna. I need to talk to you. The old man seemed to be tense when he nodded. Before we go any further, I think you should tell us who is really after your life and why, Tazuna. If you refuse to answer, then we will call off the mission immediately. Kakashi said to the old man. Tazuna stood there for a minute looking at the ground. Finally he looked up at the five of them and began. I guess I don't have a choice. I will tell you. The old man sighed and took a swig of sake before he went on. A truly terrible person is after my life. He has taken over the country of the wave by using violence and wealth as his shield. He is a huge businessman on the surface, but in the underworld he is an evil man who uses mercenaries and ninjas to ruthlessly get what he wants. The reason he wants me dead is because the one thing he fears at the moment is my completing the bridge I am building. So who is it? Kakashi asked while the young genin all paid rapt attention to the old man. You should have heard his name before at least. Tazuna paused. Marine transportation billionaire, Gato. It came and went so fast, that for a moment Kakashi wondered if he had only imagined it. But he was sure that as soon as Gato's name had been said there was a huge spike of murderous intent that disappeared seemingly as soon as it came. Looking around at the rest of the group he saw that none of them seemed to have taken notice at all. Maybe I did imagine it, but I'm not sure why I would have. But don't worry, Tazuna suddenly said. You can quit right now and go back to your village if you want. I will surely be killed on my way home, but that really isn't any of your concern. Nor is it your concern how my cute 8-year-old grandson will cry his heart out at the loss of his loving grandfather. Neither is it your problem how my beautiful daughter will forever hate Konoha for leaving me to die. Truly none of this concerns you at all. The entire Team 7 sweat dropped at the old Mont's obvious ploy. Looking at each other, they all seemed to come to a silent understanding, causing Kakashi to scratch his Hite 8. Well, I guess it can't be helped. We will continue to escort you, Kakashi said. Oh, that's good to hear. Let's get going then, shall we? Tazuna said in a victorious voice. Tazuna started walking happily along the road as Team 7 turned to follow him. Kakashi had not got very far before he was stopped by Jaga. Kakashi-sensei, I'm going to get the bodies off the road. I'll catch up to you all once I have. Is that okay? That's not a bad idea. It wouldn't be good to leave a couple dead bodies on the road leading to our village. People might be less inclined to visit. Kakashi said mostly to himself. All right, take care of it, just try not to take too long. Hi, he suddenly remembered something else he wanted to say. Sensei, you might want to talk to Ino and Naruto about what happened. They may not take seeing both of those ninja killed right in front of them too well. You're maybe right, Kakashi said. He knew why Jaga had only said those two. Sasuke had already seen far worse after all. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. Arigato sensei. Jaga stood there and watched his team walk away until they were out of sight. As soon as he was sure they were far enough away not to notice, he unleashed all the fury he had been holding tightly inside himself, and slammed his fist into a nearby tree, burying it about halfway to his wrist in the wood. A couple seconds later, blood slowly came flowing out of the hole his fist was in. Gato, he said through clenched teeth as he forced himself to get his anger back under control. Finally, after a minute or so, and Jaga having calmed himself down enough to think clearly again, he couldn't help but let out a humorless laugh at the situation he found himself in. I told the Hokage my past would catch up to me eventually, but I never thought it would be this soon, he said out loud to himself. Looking up to the sky, he voiced his thoughts again. I wonder if this is a sign that Kami loves me or absolutely hates me. Finally, he turned his attention to the bodies that were still lying in the middle of the road. Guess I better do what I stayed back to do. Because of the delay from being attacked, and then waiting for Jaga to catch up, night had fallen as they reached the edge of the sea. They decided that it would be best to make camp for the night and cross the body of water the next morning. After making the fire and setting up the tents, the group talked about the mission and what dangers could lay ahead. Finally, after a few hours, Kakashi, Tazuna, Ino, and Sasuke all went to the tents they would be sleeping in. Jaga had gone off into the woods earlier, saying he wanted to take a walk. This left only Naruto, who was staring into the dying fire, lost in thought. He didn't know how long he had been sitting there staring into the embers before he realized he was no longer alone. Can't sleep, Otuto? Jaga said as he sat down next to Naruto. I guess I just have a lot on my mind, Naruto said quietly as he continued to stare into the small flames. You know me, I've always been a night person. Jaga paused a bit and prodded the embers with a stick. You want to talk about it? He finally asked gently. Naruto seemed to hesitate, but finally he let out a sigh as he started to speak. It's just, I don't know. It seems like it isn't really happening. I keep expecting to wake up to you flipping my bed because we're late for trying to sneak past fangirls or something, you know. To wake up and realize that we were never attacked, that I didn't see two people die in front of me, that I didn't almost die, and that we are not about to keep going with a mission that even seems to have Kakashi-sensei a bit nervous since he's sure they will send Junin next. He let out another sigh, but this one was more pensive than the first. Jaga looked over to his Otuto at the sigh, and was surprised to see a look of self-loathing on his normally smiling face. Naruto? He asked, his questioning voice laced with concern. I froze, you know. Naruto said, hugging his knees to his chest. When I thought Kakashi-sensei had been killed and then the two ninja got behind me, I froze. I told myself that there was no time for me to dodge, but the truth was that I couldn't have anyway because I was scared. Naruto buried his face in his knees, trying to hide the tears that were glistening in his eyes. I'm pathetic, aren't I? All the boasting I do about becoming the Hokage, and I freeze. I really am pathetic. The tears had started falling freely now as he kept his face hidden in his knees. But you fought in the end, didn't you? Jaga said as he looked into the fire, causing Naruto's tear-stained face to rise. You worked with Sasuke to stop that chain they were using, kicked one of them in the face, put yourself in front of Ino and Tazuna when the attack shifted to them, and even charged in to meet them head-on in the end. That last one made me want to kick the crap out of you for being so reckless, by the way. Naruto felt a small smile form on his lips as his brother added that last part, but it quickly faded. I only did those things because Sasuke taking action managed to make my body work again. But what about next time? What if I freeze up again, or worse, run away? Jaga looked back at Naruto's tear-stained face. Taking a deep breath, he spoke gently. Naruto, you don't have to be so ashamed that you were afraid in a life or death situation. It shows that you're human. Jaga paused for a moment before continuing. Being afraid doesn't make you pathetic, Naruto. Letting the fear control you does. Be it from Sasuke's actions or not, you still fought in the end. You fought even though you were afraid, there's nothing pathetic about that. Jaga raised his hand and poked the Hite 8 on Naruto's forehead. You didn't earn that by being afraid, did you? You earned by working harder than anyone I ever met. You earned it by always doing your best, and always getting up again no matter how many times you fell. Never letting failure, or the fear of failure, hold you down. Jaga suddenly stood up from his spot on the ground and looked down at the almost dead fire. Today you fell Otuto, and whether or not you get back up again is completely up to you. Jagae's face once again turned to Naruto, but this time there was a soft and encouraging smile playing on his lips when he spoke. But I have faith in you. You'll get up again, just as you always have, and when the time comes you'll show everyone how strong you really are. Ruffling Naruto's hair a little, Jaga walked back into the dark forest, leaving the younger boy alone to think about everything that had been said. Neither of the two boys had realized that they were not the only ones awake, as a pair of light blue eyes looked out the flap of her tent. Ino had heard the entire conversation, and it had taken all she had not to go out and take Naruto into her arms when she had seen him crying. To see the boy who was always overflowing with energy and confidence seeming so sad and lost had made her heart wrench. She was more grateful than she wanted to admit when she heard the comforting words Jaga had said to him. Climbing back into her sleeping bag, she replayed the whole conversation in her head over and over again until sleep finally claimed her. Smash. Naruto, I told you to quit scaring me like that. Ino yelled furiously at Naruto, who was now nursing the lump on his head. That is the third time you attacked something that wasn't there. Itai, but Ino, I really did sense something each time. Naruto whined. Just stop lying and trying to show off, got it? She said with a raised fist, causing Naruto to flinch. Off to the side, Kakashi turned to Jaga. Well, he isn't lying, Jaga said in a low tone. He either really is sensing something or at least honestly believes he is. The conversation was broken by a shout from Ino. Naruto, look what you did. The poor thing is scared half to death. Gah, oh no, Naruto said as he ran to the bushes and bent down. When he came back up he was holding a snow-white rabbit and apologizing to it profusely. That's a snow rabbit, Kakashi thought to himself, but their fur should only be white in the winter when the days are short. Which means someone raised it where the sun wasn't an issue, to be used for kawarimi. Kakashi looked around to the trees searching for some sign of the new enemy. They sure got here fast. I see. No wonder the demon brothers were unable to complete the mission. At their level, with the legendary copy ninja, Sharingan Kakashi, as their opponent, they were doomed to fail. The man in the trees grabbed the hilt of a huge sword on his back. Well, let's get started. Everyone get down, Kakashi yelled as he heard the large weapon flying at them. The group barely managed to hit the ground as the giant blade passed over their heads and lodged itself into a tree. A second later, a man with bandage-like face masking, no shirt, light blue shinobi pants, and black and white camouflage arm and leg warmers appeared on its hilt with his back facing them. His head was turned in a way that showed his Kiri Hite 8 that he wore on the side of his head. Well, if it isn't Momochi Zabuza, the exiled ninja of Kirigakure. Kakashi said in a light tone as he walked up to the nin with his hands in his pockets. A movement in the corner of his eye alerted Kakashi to the fact his students were getting ready to jump in the fray. He quickly put out his hand to stop them. All of you will stay out of it. This man is nothing like the ones we faced before, Kakashi said to his team and reached up to his Hite 8. If he is the opponent, then I can't win like this. Sharingan Kakashi, I'll be needing you to hand over that geezer now. Zabuza said in a casual, yet menacing tone. Sharingan? Sasuke's mind reeled a bit at the implication. Does that mean he has it? All of you form up around Tazuna and protect him. That is your job in this fight. With those words, Kakashi raised the left side of his Henge 8, revealing a crimson eye with a black pupil and 3 comma marks around it. Oh, I'm honored that I get to see the Sharingan that I've heard so much about. But I think we should cut the chit-chat now. I really need to kill that geezer. He looked to Tazuna, who had been partially surrounded by the 4 genin who all stood facing out in different directions. 3 with kunai in hand and 1 with his hand on the hilt of his sword, ready to prevent any attack. But, it would seem I have to deal with you first. Kakashi. With that, the Kiri Nukanen grabbed his large sword from the tree and vanished. Kakashi and the rest of Team 7 waited anxiously, hoping to be able to counter whatever attack the Nukanen might do. As they waited, they noticed the mist surrounding them was steadily getting thicker. Kakashi, realizing it would be dangerous to lose sight of his team, made a few quick seals and then let off a blast of chakra to dispel some of the mist around them. Sasuke unfortunately was having a panic attack at the killing intent he was feeling from the 2 Junin. I feel like I'm going to go crazy. The desire to kill coming from both Junin, the feeling that my life is in someone else's hands, I can't take it. The clutched the kunai he held with both hands. I would rather kill myself than feel this way. He started to raise the kunai to strike himself. Sasuke, the voice of Kakashi snapped the frightened boy back to reality. Don't worry, I will protect you all with my life. Kakashi turned to look at the raven-haired boy. I won't let anyone on my team die. He said as his eyes closed in a smile. I wouldn't be so sure of that. Zabuza's voice ghosted from the mist. Then without the slightest warning, he was in the middle of the protective formation the genin had made. Kakashi looked back and saw Zabuza, his Sharingan fixing on the man, and began to charge. It's Ove, ga, was all Zabuza managed to say before a blade pierced his stomach. Kakashi had stopped mid-charge in disbelief at the scene before him. Zabuza was still in the middle of the formation, but with Jagae's sword stuck in his stomach and Jagae was still facing Kakashi with his blade stabbing behind him at his hip. Sorry, reflex, was all Jagae said. Unfortunately, any thoughts of victory were short-lived as Zabuza burst into water, while at the same time, another Zabuza appeared behind Kakashi. Sensei behind you, Naruto shouted, but it was too late. Before Kakashi could even fully turn around, the giant cleaver-like sword sliced him in half. Only Jagae wasn't surprised when Kakashi also turned out to be water. Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu, Zabuza said in shock. Before he could finish processing what happened, he realized he had a kunai to his throat. Don't move, Kakashi said from behind Zabuza. It's over. Hehehe, over is it? Zabuza said, his laughter surprising Kakashi. Sensei, that one is water too. Jagae called out. He suddenly jumped to the side as a huge sword came crashing down where he had just been standing. Before Jagae's feet could hit the ground again, the Zabuza that attacked him swung his blades sideways, forcing Jagae to block it with his own. The force of the colliding blades sent Jagae flying into the surrounding trees with the Mizu Bunshin hot on his trail. He's singling out Jagae, Kakashi realized. At the same time, he also realized that the real Zabuza was behind him. Barely ducking in time, he avoided the swing that was supposed to take his head off. But he wasn't able to avoid the powerful kick that Zabuza followed up with. The force of the kick launched Kakashi into the nearby lake, and before he could get out, Zabuza was next to him doing seals. Suiru no Jutsu, Zabuza said, and suddenly Kakashi was trapped in a sphere of water. You're troublesome when you're moving around, Kakashi, so I'll just keep you in there while I take care of the broads. Keeping his right hand in the sphere of water, Zabuza made a sign with his left. Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu, when he finished, a pillar of water rose from the lake and took the form of Zabuza. Before any of them could react, the Mizu Bunshin Zabuza appeared in front of Naruto and kneed him in the face, sending him flying backwards and his Henge 8 falling from his head. Zabuza slammed his foot on the item where it fell. Naruto looked back from where he fell, terror clear in his eyes. He saw the Junin in front of him. He saw Kakashi trapped in the water sphere. He knew they were no match. He was afraid. All of you run, Kakashi yelled from the water prison. He can't move because of the jutsu he's using, and if you get far enough away he won't be able to use his Mizu Bunshins on you. You have to run now. Run, you can't be serious. We lost that option the moment you were caught. Even if we got away he would just hunt us down at his leisure later. Sasuke raged in his mind. Not only that, Jaga has been drugged into a fight with one of those Mizu Bunshins, and it's not like we can casually ask Zabuza to let Jaga leave with us. The only chance any of us have now is to save you. Sasuke made his charge, throwing shuriken as he did. Zabuza easily knocked the projectiles to the side, and saw Sasuke coming in from above him. "I've got you," Sasuke yelled. "HMPH, too easy," Zabuza said as he casually grabbed Sasuke by the throat, choking him a bit before throwing him to the ground. "Sasuke," Ino cried, as she saw him slam into the ground. Even Sasuke got. Naruto felt his fear rising. "We can't win, this is a Junin, a real ninja. And at this rate we'll all be killed for sure. I have to run away." Naruto turned in his position on the ground, his fear driving him. His only thought being to get away. He was going to run. Then he heard it, the distinct sound of metal on metal, followed by a crash and an angry shout. Naruto knew instantly whose voice that was. "Ni-san, being afraid doesn't make you pathetic, Naruto. Letting the fear control you does." The words Jaga had said to him the night before came flooding into Naruto's mind. His body wouldn't move anymore, he couldn't make himself run. Slowly Naruto turned his head and looked back at the Junin behind him, his eyes going to his feet where his Hite 8 was still being stepped on. "You didn't earn that by being afraid, did you?" Naruto remembered the night he earned his Hite 8. Iruka's smiling face coming into his mind. "Congratulations Naruto, you passed." Then those words that had made him so happy found him again. "I'm proud of you, Otuto." That's right, Naruto thought. His body had begun to move again and he was slowly getting to his feet. "I can't run away now. If I did, I would never be able to look any of them in the face again. Ni-san is fighting, Sasuke is fighting, Kakashi sensei is fighting, even Ino is standing her ground. If I run now I really will be pathetic. I won't be pathetic again," Naruto yelled out as he charged full speed directly at Zabuza. "Naruto, don't," Ino cried out in fear. "Idiot," was all Zabuza said before he sent Naruto bouncing across the ground to his teammates. "Naruto, are you crazy? What are you thinking charging in like that?" Ino yelled at the boy on the ground. She was about to say more when she was cut off when Naruto grunted and started to rise. It was then Ino noticed what he held clenched in his hand. He went to get his Hite 8. Ino could only watch as Naruto slowly got back on his feet. It was obvious that it was painful, but he kept rising. As she watched, Jagae's words to Naruto found their way to her mind. "I believe in you. You'll get up again, just as you always have, and when the time comes." "Hey, no brow over there," Naruto's voice rang out. "Remember this and remember this well. I'm the man who will take on the title of Hokage one day." He started readying his Hite 8 on his head. The Konhagakure shinobi, he looked directly at Zabuza, all fear gone. "Uzumaki Naruto, you'll show everyone how strong you really are." As those words came back to her mind, Ino could only stare in wonder at the blonde in front of her. She could feel her heart beating faster, and it had nothing to do with fear. She felt her cheeks start to color ever so slightly as her mind said what she wanted to say out loud. "I believe in you too, Naruto." Needless to say, Zabuza was more than a little annoyed by the declaration from the young blonde boy. "Hey Sasuke, you up for helping me kick Bandage Face's ass?" Naruto said with a grin. Sasuke looked at Naruto for a minute like he was insane. But seeing that grin of his, Sasuke couldn't help but get a small one of his own. "Yep, we're insane. Depends, what are our chances?" he said as he walked up beside Naruto. "With the two of us working together, I'd say slim to none." Naruto said, his grin widening. "Really, and here I thought it might actually be hard," Sasuke said, giving Zabuza his best smirk. "Well then," Naruto said, wiping some blood from his face. "Let's go wild." If Zabuza was annoyed before, he was pissed now. "You brats not only want to keep acting like you're ninja, but you also think you even have a chance at beating me. Maybe you should know that by the time I was your age my hands were already soaked with blood." Okay, that managed to shock them all a bit. "The demon Zabuza," Kakashi said from his prison. "Oh, so you've heard of what happened?" Zabuza asked with mild interest. A long time ago, Kirigakure was known as the village of Bloody Mist. Because of the finale test that had to be taken in order to become a ninja. Kakashi said. "What was the finale test?" Naruto asked, causing Zabuza to laugh. Students who had worked together, competed together, and shared their dreams with each other were separated into groups of 2 and made. Zabuza looked at the genin in front of him. To fight to the death. The genin looked in horror at the junin in front of them, barely believing that they had heard correctly. 10 years ago Kiri had to go through a reformation because of an incident a year before. A young boy who had not even earned the right to be a ninja, killed over 100 candidates without hesitation. Kakashi told them all. Zabuza was staring off into space as if lost in thought. That was fun, he said wistfully. Then he focused on the genin. Before anyone could react, Zabuza had slammed an elbow into Sasuke's chest, sending him to the ground, then brought his elbow down hard on Sasuke's stomach. Straightening up, Zabuza slammed his foot into the same place and began grinding with it, as his hand reached to the sword on his back. Die, he said as he continued to grind Sasuke into the ground. Kage Bunshin no Justu, Naruto yelled, creating at least 50 clones. Oh, Kage Bunshin's age, and you created quite a few of them. Zabuza said, casually looking around. All the Narutos pulled out a kunai and got into a ready stance. Here I come, asshole, Naruto said just before he charged at Zabuza. Some clones jumping up to come at Zabuza from above. The end result was a giant Naruto dome covering Zabuza. At least until Zabuza threw all the clones away with a powerful shove. Clones were poofing out of existence left and right as they hit the ground. One Naruto was digging into his pack as he slid. This is the best chance we got. Pulling out his Fuma shuriken, he threw it to Sasuke, who caught the weapon. Sasuke was surprised when he first realized what Naruto had planned, but that faded quickly. Not bad, Naruto, I should have known you would think of something like this. He unfolded the deadly weapon and held it in front of him. Fuma shuriken, Kage Funsha, he said to the Junin. A shuriken won't work against me, Zabuza said calmly. Ignoring him, Sasuke jumped into the air and with a strong spin of his body sent the large shuriken flying. Zabuza stood calmly preparing to catch the weapon, when he realized that it was not aiming for him. Instead it flew past him and started heading for the real Zabuza. Any chance he might have had to stop the thing disappeared when he felt sharp pain in his side. Looking down, he saw 3 kunai in his body, water spewing out. Forgot about me, didn't you? Ino said with a smirk as he burst into water. She had used the clone's lapse in concentration to launch a surprise attack on the annoying waterman. So they're attacking the real one this time, As the blade was about to strike him, he grabbed it, pulled it to the side. But it still won't work. When the next one appeared, he was a little surprised. Another shuriken was in the shadow of the first. With his 2 hands already occupied, he did the easiest thing next to catching it. He jumped over it. Once again though, too easy. Sasuke just let out a smirk. With a pop of smoke, the flying shuriken turned into a flying Naruto who was now directly behind a very surprised Zabuza. Eat this, Naruto yelled as he threw a kunai straight at the Junin, aiming her a spot that would make it impossible to dodge without moving. And move Zabuza did, taking his hand out of the water sphere and releasing the jutsu he had Kakashi imprisoned in without realizing it. You little brat, Zabuza yelled as he went to kill Naruto with the Fuma shuriken he still held. Only to have it stopped by the now free Kakashi, and the look Kakashi gave him actually sent a chill down Zabuza's spine. Naruto, I was really impressed with that plan of yours, Kakashi said. Hee, I never thought I could beat Zabuza. I just used all those Kage Bunshins to hide the fact I had transformed into a Fuma shuriken. Then I had a clone throw me to Sasuke, who instantly realized it was me and took out his own shuriken and used Kage shuriken. I was hiding in the shadow of the real one and went straight for Zabuza. I knew it wouldn't beat him, but I hoped it might at least make him drop the Suiru no Jutsu and give us a fighting chance. Naruto let off a huge grin. Then if you add the fact Ino managed to use the opportunity to take out the Mizu Bunshin, I would say it was a huge success. Hey, if you think that was good, you should have seen some of the pranks we pulled before, Sasuke said, still smirking proudly, making Naruto's grin widen even more. So I got distracted and released the Suiru no Jutsu, Zabuza said lightly. No, you didn't release it. You were forced to, Kakashi said scathingly, causing the other Junin to give him a hard look. Let me warn you, the same jutsu will not work on me twice, Kakashi said. So what will you do? Zabuza gave the silver-haired Junin a hate-filled glare. He had every intention of killing the Konoha ninja. Jaga was breathing hard as he looked down at the newly formed puddle of water. He had been fighting the damn thing for a while now, and even though he had managed to avoid being hit by that huge sword, the punches and kicks he didn't had managed to do enough damage on their own. I have to stop forcing myself to fight like this. It's going to get me killed. I can't believe I was getting my ass handed to me by a bunch of water. Jaga was more than a little mad at himself for how the fight had gone. He had been on the defensive the whole time. He started to wonder how the rest of his team was doing, hoping to Kami that no one had been hurt. He was trying to get his bearings so he could go back to the others, when he saw a huge raging jet of water smash into a tree about 300 yards to his left. I guess they're over there, he thought, and began heading in the direction of the attack. Can you see the future? Zabuza asked in a weak voice after getting hit with his own technique. Yes, you're going to die, Kakashi said as he raised a kunai. From out of nowhere 2 senbon needles drove straight into Zabuza's neck. Well, it would seem that he did die after all. A light voice came ghosting from the trees. Looking in the direction it had come from, Kakashi saw 2 young ninjas standing on a branch of a tree not far away. One had black hair with 2 large strands of it falling over his face and the rest in a knot, held in a piece of cloth on the top of his head. He was dressed in a bluish-green robe-like top, with a brown long-sleeved turtle-neck shirt underneath, and brown dress-like pants. He also had a mask on that had 2 red curved lines almost resembling fire coming from the bottom of it. The other on was completely different. His hair was short and dark brown and he wore dark reed shinobi pants, and a sleeveless dark red shirt. But what really set him apart was the weapon he carried. It looked like 2 broad swords connected by about 2 feet of metal in the middle. A staff with blades, as it were. The only thing similar of the 2 was that this one also wore a mask. Only his had 3 red slash-like marks going diagonally across his. The 2 disappeared in a whirl of leaves and reappeared next to Zabuza's body. We have to thank you, the girly one said to Kakashi. We have been looking for an opportunity to kill Zabuza for quite some time. Kakashi analyzed the pair for a moment before speaking. From the looks of it, I would say that the 2 of you are Hunter Nin from Kurgakure. Yes, we are members of the Pursuit Ninja Unit. That. Whatever else he was going to say was cut short as Jaga came flying towards the 2 from out of nowhere, his sword already aiming for the one speaking. He never made contact though, as his sword was blocked by one of the blades of the boy in red's weapon. The boy in red then backed his blade off and used the other side to take a swipe at Jaga's neck. Jaga quickly jumped back and threw a few shuriken at the boy, only to have him block them all by spinning his weapon. Jaga, Kakashi said in surprise at the sudden arrival and immediate fighting. What are you? Sensei, stop them, they're lying about who they are and why they're here. Kakashi immediately moved to intercept them, but it was too late as the one who was talking had already grabbed Zabuza and disappeared in another whirl of leaves. The remaining one looked at Jaga intently for a moment and then spoke. The next time we meet, I would like to fight you. A whirl of leaves began to form around the boy, but just before he vanished he said one finale thing. The real you, Jaga stared at where the boy had been a few seconds before he resheathed his sword. Turning around he was suddenly confronted by 3 pairs of angry eyes, 2 being blue and 1 being black. What's up? He said a bit nervously. How in the hell did you know they were lying, and why didn't Kakashi-sensei seem surprised at all by the fact you did? Naruto said in a clearly annoyed tone as the other 2 nodded their agreement to the question, still staring hard. Oh, that. Jaga scratched the back of his head and gave them a sheepish grin. Did I never mention that I have always been able to tell when someone's lying? The shocked reactions he got made the answer pretty clear. I guess I never got around to it. He wasn't lying, he honestly thought he would have at least mentioned it to them by now. Is there anything else that you can do that you haven't told us? Sasuke said through clenched teeth. Man, they were taking the fact they didn't know about this hard. Well, I guess I should mention that lately I have been able to see through all henges and genjutsus. I also can't seem to turn the ability off any more than I can the lie detector thing. Once more the 3 managed to look completely shocked. Jaga could see they were about to ask something else, when Kakashi suddenly fell over from exhaustion, making the young genin turn their attention to him. Well, at least I get out of 20 questions for a while. Jaga thought to himself as he helped pick up their unconscious sensei. THSTA all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.